Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Norwich Selectboard. This is Thursday, January 26, 2023. Our normal regular meeting of this board was to have happened on Wednesday, January 25th, but the weather was forecast encouraged us to cancel and reschedule the meeting in the interest of travel and safety. With that background, my name is Marcia Calloway. I'm currently serving as chair. I'm joined in alphabetical order by board members Roger Arnold, Robert Deere, Mary Layton, vice chair, who's also taking minutes, thank you very much again, and Aaron Lamperti. This meeting is being held in person in the Norwich Public Safety, Police and Fire Community Room. There is no remote capability this evening. CATV is with us, however, and they will be broadcasting this meeting, I believe, via YouTube. As always, the agenda and packet materials were distributed via the Norwich listserv, and they are also available on the town website under the Select Board tab. The first item on the agenda is agenda review. I would note first that there's no consent agenda tonight, as we had a meeting on Monday of this week. We do need, however, to consider some amendments to this evening's agenda. First, I don't believe we're ready to appoint a tree warden. However, we do need to discuss reappointment of that statutorily required town position. I would suggest that we amend the agenda by moving this from an action item to a discussion item and renumbering it as item number 7. Second, on the December 28th, 2022 meeting, the board unanimously authorized the purchase of the SCBA equipment for the fire department as reflected on the minutes of that meeting, page 4, paragraph F. Accordingly, we should amend tonight's agenda to remove old item 7. Third, an issue has come to our attention that involves an issue pertaining to the NEPBA contractual matters for which an executive session is required. It is suggested that we amend the agenda by adding an executive session pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1B as new item 9. Do we have a motion to capture all of that?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rob Gears seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Informational items. This time is used for important information for which there will not necessarily be any immediate action nor public comment. We won't preclude public comment for this. We're going to talk first. Item 3 is the December 2022 financials. We're very pleased to have these financials tonight as submitted by our interim finance officer, Joyce Hasbrook. However, as Joyce is an interim, she's not able to join us for all board meetings, and so we do not have the benefit of her presence to explain the work. Therefore, if there are questions about the report, we should submit them to her so that she can answer them during work hours, and we will include those answers in the next packet. Has the board had a chance to review the December financials?
Yes, I have.
Any comments, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
Just it's very striking in looking at the dashboard, the difference in the underspending of personnel and the overspending of expenses. It's very striking to look at. I mean, it makes sense because we've been not having positions filled, but then the increase in expenses is also a little concerning to me. So,
Anyone else? Comments? Any questions for Joyce? Anyone in the public? Charlotte Metcalf?
Yeah, just about protocol. I was unable to finish what I was saying last week at the meeting because I was interrupted by a board member, and I would like, I mean, if there's a chance to finish what I was saying at that time. And I didn't know whether there was an appropriate time.
Yeah.
Maybe end of the meeting when it's open to public comment.
We don't have anything it would sort of lie under this time. We don't have any correspondence. So go ahead and make your comment.
Okay, I was responding to another member of the community who asked about what was happening to police funds that have been accrued by the town, that we were taxed for, that were not used for police in the last 4 or 5 years. And I started to say that I had talked to a couple of members of the board because I was very concerned about the size of the department. And I was told that it was decided by the town manager at that time that we would not be hiring a new chief, that perhaps the person I was speaking to had the ear of the town manager and could convince him to hire some temporary members of the police to help make up the real deficit we had. And subsequently, someone who was violated terribly by some criminals in her home spoke to the chief, knowing that to the town manager. Did I say chief each time? I meant town manager. All right, so the person went to the town manager and spent an hour, and he assured her that he felt just as she did, as he had felt about Jennifer Frank being a good hire and a good person for the town, and that he was very afraid of losing his job if he insisted on hiring police. So what I'm asking for tonight is that when people run for the select board, they are very clear about their position on such serious matters and do not pass the buck to someone else for being responsible. And I know that it is the town manager's responsibility to hire and fire. But this board admittedly has a huge influence on what the town manager does. So I reiterate my plea that you start to listen to people who have been speaking up about how they're concerned about safety, and don't pass the buck on to another person.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I was going to do a little bit of housekeeping today and just say we've had extraordinarily long meetings for several weeks. So to the extent that we'd like to make them shorter, more succinct for everybody's benefit, it would be great if people have a comment that is mirrored by the comment before them, if they can just say, I concur. And if people are rambling, be it the board or the people who are here to join us, I'm going to just say, point of order, we need to be more succinct, or we've heard that. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I do think we're at a point where we have to keep things moving and try and get out of here, especially when it's icy. Okay, I believe that Cheryl had a comment. Can you just state your name?
Yes.
I've sort of made an executive decision. There's nothing in the law that I know of that says you have to say where you're living, and given the world today, you can just say your name and you're a town resident. I think that
Cheryl
should be
Lindbergh,
fine.
I live in Norwich, I'm town treasurer, and I appreciate having financial reports, as always, in the packet. One thing I would ask is, if I have some particular questions, is it all right with the select board that I write those to Joyce and ask those questions of her, or the town manager, whatever, so that I don't belabor them tonight, so I can get an answer to some of those matters?
Yeah, I think we should have a protocol here where we just funnel them through Brennan, and he can send them to the town manager, to the interim financial officer. And then I think responses should probably be in the packet.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, great. I'll make that the thing. I just wanted to comment in general on, when you're looking at them right now, we should be 50% of the way through the year. So the percentages on that far column should be 50%. If there's something greater, lesser than that, obviously that reflects more spending or lack of spending. And I wanted to point out that all of the designated funds at this point have been funded, so that is boosting up they've been 100% funded, so that's boosting up some of the department expenses percentage because they're fully funded already halfway through the year instead of half funded and then the other half in the second part of the year, which is fine. And there's a couple of items in particular I noticed that I would like to make sure that the items that are expensed aren't capital expenditures within the general fund expenditure budget that should be, you know, coming from a reserve fund or something. Those are common questions and comments that I have, that's all.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think that's an interesting point about the designated funds making it look like there's more expense. Should there be some distinction between what's budgeted and what's coming out of designated?
No, I think it just needs to be caught up in terms of housekeeping, so that it's an accurate picture when you're looking at the figures.
In total.
And that might be what Cheryl was alluding to, that they hadn't, the allocations to designated funds had not been accounted for, so it changed the picture of how the budget has looked. Was that your point?
My point is they've been fully funded already this fiscal year, and so in the past, they might have been half funded for the first 6 months,
Oh, I
half
see.
funded for the second.
I see, so it's a
So
little
right now, we're
different.
seeing 100% funding of all the
Okay.
reserve funds, that's all.
Thank you.
Anything else? Stuart Richards.
Stuart Richards, Norwich resident. So I have a concern about the money that was, that would have been spent if we had a full police force. And I'm just not aware of where that money is and whether it's available to be spent when the police force is fully fleshed out, if it is fully fleshed out. And the other concern that I have, and pardon me for asking, because I don't know where the money is. And I would like to know, and I'm sure there are other people who have a concern as well. The other part of this is the ARPA money. I mean, $750,000 or whatever the amount is, if that's not the correct amount. I'd like to know where that is and what it can be spent for and whether it can be accounted for. So, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We can send those to Joyce. I know last week we did get a question about the bottom line, basically, and we're waiting for an audit to be completed. And in terms of the ARPA money, it's over $1 million, and there is a fund, and how it's to be spent. We've had those discussions and presentations. It's also, there's materials available, I can send you that, but we haven't reached that point of discussion yet. Okay, anything else on financials? All set, okay. We have our very first interim town manager report, so please feel free to take the floor.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, to everyone out there, I think I've met most of you already, but my name's Brennan Duffy. I am 6 weeks in or so for my time as the interim town manager here, and have prepared, I guess, just a little rundown of things we're working on for different departments, and I'll just be kind of running through those. Yeah, I guess a lot of what I've been focusing on here in the last few weeks has been related to human resources and trying to refill some of the vacancies that we have here within the municipality, and in part that trying to really rebuild a positive culture within Tracy Hall and within the municipal works. So that is going fairly well. I'll have something that will make folks happy here in this room, I think, in a minute. I haven't done one of these for Norwich before, so again, I don't know if there's a precedent or a template, but I thought I would just look through the different departments of city government that we oversee, excluding the Lister's office and the clerk's office, because those are elected officials. And if I will, I'll start out with our finance department. So I know Joyce and Ashley have been working very hard. We are right now starting to collect property taxes, so that is creating a fairly steady stream of folks coming in with deposits. As we all know, the budget was approved recently, so that had been taking a lot of our interim finance director's time to work through that with the select board and everyone else, and we were all pleased, I guess, to at least come up with a finalized budget, which will be presented to the voters here in March. I know Joyce is also working with our auditors right now, setting up a meeting that I think was supposed to have taken place this week, but maybe was canceled due to some weather. We are still hoping to be able to complete that audit and have a report out for the second meeting in February, which is coming up very quickly. So I don't want to promise that that will occur, but that is the plan at the moment. So stay tuned. As you saw, we just discussed the December financials. And again, Joyce has pledged to answer questions if we have some, and I assume we will. So not only Cheryl, but if anyone else wants to ask a specific question of the financials that were presented, send those to me. And just to be clear, my email address is bduffy. I know there's a couple older addresses. One of them is manager, which I don't seem to be receiving any correspondence from. So bduffy@norwich.dp.us if you want to reach me directly. So I think that's all I was going to say about the finance department. On the HR side, and there's usually a human resource component to almost all of these departments. We are aware that Joyce is an interim, and we need to fill that position, and that is a pretty critical position to city government. It's really almost the engine of our municipal operations. So we have been working with Joyce to create an update to the job duties for that position, and hopefully we'll be posting that publicly within the next week, I think is our time frame. And I can't promise how quickly we will find a suitable candidate for that, but we'll at least have started that hiring process. And again, Joyce has been very helpful in trying to come up with the duties that are being done on a regular basis, so we have updated our responsibilities a little bit from what was posted previously. So I'll move now to our planning department. This also, I'll start out with the human resource piece. So we, as you know, are missing a planning department per se. We have an administrative assistant, Pam Mullen, who's been working diligently to kind of keep things going. But we have just this week posted for a full-time planning director and zoning administrator. So as we know from the budget process, that is going to be a full-time professional position that will encompass both of those duties within that office. We have received some interest already from the initial posting, and we're hoping to work with a steering committee or a hiring committee that's been put together with folks representing various entities like the DRB and the Planning Commission. Roger, do you want to?
Marcia, do you want to take questions at the end, or can I ask a question now?
Well, which do you prefer?
I don't really mind answering on the fly.
So it's been 30 days without a zoning administrator. Do we know?
Can you speak up?
I'm talking to my colleagues. I want to make sure that my colleagues hear me, most importantly.
Yeah.
But we've
We also want the.
we've been 30 days without a zoning administrator. Do you know if there are any open permits and if any of them have defaulted?
There are. So maybe what we'll do, let me get through each of these because I'm going to answer that
Okay.
in part of this presentation.
That's
but
great.
yeah, good question, and I'll just skip to that right now. So yes, we have been without an official zoning administrator. We do have, to my knowledge, several permits that have been submitted that are still within that 30-day period for a response. We've actually just last week been contacted by the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, who have offered, I guess some time has freed up, so they have offered to actually be able to share some of their resources via a part-time zoning administrator contracted with the city. So I think that might get us through this next period of time until we get a permanent full-time person there. And I know the gentleman was just there yesterday meeting with Pam Mullen to kind of figure out what all was there. We're envisioning that this would be a 4 to 5 hour a week as needed position, again, in the interim. And thank you to Two Rivers for volunteering to assist here. I know they had been asked and I think didn't have the resources available, and it sounds like something has shifted a little bit, so they may be able to help us. So that is good news, and my guess would be that we could have a contract ready for the first meeting in February for ratification from the select board for that commitment, and also I think we actually need to appoint a interim zoning administrator by statute, so that would be potentially able to be done in early February.
And I just want to make sure that this isn't any different sort of responsibilities, because as you know from the statute, I'm concerned about whether or not we need to have a delineation or not, but.
Between the planning commission and the zoning administrator, is that what we're talking about?
I have to look at the statute again, but I know we talked about it in the past,
Yeah.
but it's not gonna be any distinction in terms of the different responsibilities.
No.
Just
I
part-time.
think I'm satisfied that we can have a zoning administrator serving with a planning commission, if that's what we're talking about. There's no reason we couldn't do that by statute.
Okay,
Okay?
yep,
Okay, so more to come on that, but it sounds promising that we'll have at least some temporary help, and I'm fairly optimistic we might have a full-time person there to bring forth here in the next couple of weeks, so that would be great.
can I just make sure everybody's hearing everything?
So, okay, I'm trying to swivel here, but
We
if
can hear you very well, thank you.
Okay,
Great. So here is the topic that I thought would make many in the room happy to hear. Moving to the police. So we have, as of Monday, gone through a hiring process with 2 candidates, one for the sergeant position that is open and one for a patrol officer position. And as of Monday, that was ratified by the select board in an executive session and then announced following that. And those candidates have now passed their background check, a preliminary drug screen, and have been ratified. So I think we are officially ready to announce that they have been hired
That's great.
by the city. So we now have a police chief. And I don't want to take much credit for this because I had very little to do with it. But since the chief is not here, I get to get the good news. So if you'd like, I can give maybe a little synopsis that the chief has written up for each of those, just to give people an idea of what we have here. And I think at this point we can announce their names. So for the patrol officer, the chief writes that Officer Chelsea Maxim will start with the Norwich Police Department on Monday, January 30th. Chelsea has worked for a year for the Orange County Sheriff's Department as a uniform deputy. Chelsea is a level 2 certified officer who will need to attend the full-time academy in approximately a year. She will work the road after a strict field training. Chelsea brings a positive attitude and likes working for a small town. So I know she is going to be sworn in on Monday morning by the city clerk and then onboarded for HR with Miranda, and I believe we'll be working it next week. So that is great. And then for the sergeant position, so Officer Stuart Richards comes from Thetford Police Department, where he's worked for the past several years. Stuart has approximately 15 years of experience and brings a lot of talent and training. He very much understands what it's like to work for a small town and how important community policing is. Stuart went through a competitive process for the open sergeant position with other candidates and was selected by an outside board as well as a union representative. Stuart will start with the Norwich Police Department on March 6th as a uniformed sergeant. And then the chief writes further, these candidates have been through a vigorous background check as well as interview process. I am confident that the 2 selected to fill these open positions will be the right fit for the Norwich Police Department and add to the team we currently have. I look forward to working with them. The town of Norwich is lucky to have 2 wonderful candidates to fill these positions. So that is the chief's words there, and I know he's very pleased to have found those folks in a very competitive labor market and made what he feels are going to be really great hires for the town moving forward.
Stuart, do you have a question?
Yes, Stuart Richards, a question about it with Stuart Richards being hired. One of the issues has been whether the pay for the new officers would be competitive with the market. And I'm curious to know what the pay level, I believe it's public information, what the pay level is going to be for each of those officers.
I think it will be public. I don't have that right at the top of my head, Stuart, but they were obviously hired at a competitive rate that would bring them here from other departments. So I can say that the chief put together, the chief, the select board, and myself actually put together what we felt was the attractive package to
Terrific.
entice them.
Yeah, the reason for the question is simply, if we hire people at non-competitive wages, it's not
Yeah.
likely that they're gonna stay. So
We know.
I'm glad to hear that the pay package is, by all reports, competitive. Thank you.
I believe it is competitive, and
That's great.
we'll retain our new officers, yeah. Good. So that's all I had on the police department. So moving to the Department of Public Works, obviously they have been out working hard to keep the roads safe with all of this recent winter activity. I know I've seen and heard of a few issues with mailboxes being damaged as part of the snow removal. I don't know how prevalent that is. I can say, as I pulled out of my driveway this morning in Rutland, my mailbox was hanging off the doors as well. And my theory is, obviously, with this very wet, heavy snow that we've been having, there's a lot of weight being thrown around there when those roads are cleared. So I think my take on it is that this is kind of a personal responsibility if indeed your mailbox has been damaged. I know we've fielded a number of complaints this week, and I just hope people are understanding and patient that this is a very difficult job being done under stressful circumstances. No one is certainly intentionally damaging anyone's mailbox, but there are events that occur, unfortunately. So, with that said, we're going to discuss later in the agenda RFP proposal to purchase a new generator for the DPW facility. So I'll just leave that until we get to it in the agenda. I'm also aware that Chris Kaufman, our director, is going to be issuing 2 RFPs going out on January 30th. One for road culverts that he's looking to pursue and purchase, and another for line striping that he'd like to pursue in the spring when the roads are clear.
Fred, could you repeat that RFP for what?
So 2 RFPs, one is for road culverts, and the second is for line striping.
Line striping. Yes.
What is he doing the white lines on the side, or is it crosswalks, or is it a combination?
He has a combination, he explained to me, and I probably wouldn't be able to do it justice, but he has, obviously, with the inability to tackle every line stripe that needs to be redone, come up with a plan that would get a lot done, I think, in the iteration of what he's looking to do. And also on the human resource side of that, so there are 2 open positions right now in that department, an equipment operator and a building and ground technician. So I know we've had those posted. I think we're going to try to be a little more active in trying to promote and market those to try to find 2 more people to come in. And I know he's a little understaffed right now, and that's difficult, especially in these winter emergency conditions. So we're hopeful we'll be able to fill those 2 critical positions as well. So that's all I had on DPW. On the fire, I did speak with Chief Northern this morning. He did not report anything unusual or something he felt was needed to be talked about tonight, so I'll leave that one. On the recreation department side, I know there are a lot of winter activities currently underway and planned. Bree popped through our office this afternoon and was talking about a Nordic at Night event. I might have not written these down correctly, but I believe that's Nordic skiing during the evening hours, which sounds fun. She's been putting together these potluck dinners at Tracy Hall, and I think has one planned before the town meeting. And then an ice rink event at the ice rink that's now operational. Hopefully, will soon be back operational after all the snow and slush, but that is also in place. And I know she's also running a lot of winter sports activities with basketball and everything. So seems very busy and very happy to be servicing us with events. So I'll go to my office. So as folks know, I work with a colleague, Miranda Bergmeyer, who is continuing to do a wonderful job there and juggling many, many balls on a regular basis, keeping them all in the air somehow. So we have a lot of different things going on in different areas. The human resource piece, as mentioned, been taking up quite a bit of time trying to get job descriptions updated and get those out. And then obviously when we get to the point where we have applicants coming in, that's going to be taking up a lot of effort as well. So the budget obviously was something we were focused on until last week, and now that's kind of in the rearview mirror for a bit. We had a transfer station renewal that Miranda was just able to complete and submit yesterday. So that's something that needs to be done through the state on a regular basis.
Could you explain that a little bit?
It's a re-upping, I guess, of the registration for our transfer station
So you have to register the,
with the state.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is that very involved?
Closure line, yes, Joe, you were involved.
Yeah, I was involved.
There are a couple things that they like to see, I guess, just on a regular basis, and we've come up to the end of the year with that due. We actually got a slight extension there, and we got deadlines at 30th, but we got it off yesterday.
So there's an actual inspection, and then they have a checklist and things like that, or?
You know, I honestly didn't have hands-on with a lot of the paperwork. I know there was some, I don't know if there's an inspection needed, but we had to kind of spell out all of the pieces that
details.
went into it.
Yeah.
And notify the butters and things of that sort.
Okay, and how, is that bi-yearly, or is that a term?
No, to be honest with you, I'm not sure when
10.
it expires.
Every
10
10
years?
years?
Sure, all
Sure
right.
it was, okay.
10 years,
You
so
lucked out.
I
All
did.
right.
Good to not know things and have someone that does. Yes, so 10 years, I guess, is our next term of operation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Seemed like a lot of due diligence on the state's part, but
Maybe there's more to it.
maybe.
Primarily Miranda is also working on the annual meeting warning. So as we know, we've been working through the articles and putting that together. And the town report, which is coming due as well. That is going to be due to the printer by February 9th. So busy compiling a lot of different things. She asked me to remind the select board that there's a piece associated to you. I think I have something to do as well as the interim town manager. But a lot of moving parts that go into putting that together, and it's not easy. So she's doing a nice job with that. So I guess that's all I have. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but on a regular basis, we're dealing with things that are coming up throughout the day, and hopefully be successful in that. And then the last category I had put together was just kind of a miscellaneous, and I wanted just to mention that we're working with the Norwich School Board and the Selectboard and the Town Manager's Office, as well as GM and CATV. I always forget what I should be calling that now. Is it just GM maybe? Anyway, we are planning to hold the informational meeting in the gymnasium at Tracy Hall, and that will be on the evening of March 6th, which is a Monday. And we're looking to work with CATV on potentially a hybrid where folks might not have to actually come in person, but would certainly be able to at least see it on live stream and maybe even participate. During the discussion there, that's something we're going to be working on in the next week or so to confirm.
Do we know who goes first this year?
What's that?
Who goes first this year?
As far
order.
as-
The order?
I
Who's
don't
up
know that
first?
we've even discussed that yet.
Well, who went first last year?
We'll get to
Yeah.
that.
We think it's us this year.
Thank
You
you.
think it's-
Okay. Well,
Priscilla Vincent, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, Priscilla Vincent, Norwich. I'm very pleased to hear about a hybrid town meeting, and I would like to request earnestly that every select board meeting also be hybrid. I know we attempted to do that a week or so ago. Something got all messed up, which we know happens with technology, but I'd like to encourage as much progress as possible to make that a real thing, because we know when it was completely Zoom, we had, 45, 50 people. I think people want to participate, and it's a lot easier if it's a hybrid situation, and I think you're gonna get better feedback from the town.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we'll discuss that a little later in the agenda, because the House bill was just passed and signed, I believe, today, which allows for the towns to go back to a remote meeting format here. if-
Well,
if we
I'm
chose.
really pleased you're meeting in person. You know, I think that's very important, but I think the hybrid component is very important too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kept me from diving in again was we had so many important things with a deadline. I didn't want to mess it up again because we had to cancel one meeting, but we'll get braver when we don't have these.
Yeah, well,
For any
duly
issues.
noted, thank you.
Yes.
So that's really all I had. Again, I'm happy to tweak that for future presentations. I wasn't quite sure what to expect or what was expected, so that's
I think
kind of
that
what's
was-
going on.
That was excellent. I feel I have a better handle on everything. And, you know, it's kind of a work in progress, but I think in general, people want to know what's going on in the town. So, any other comments from the board?
Thanks, Brendan.
Yes,
That's good.
thank you very much. Cheryl, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, Cheryl Lindberg. I have a couple thoughts. In the past, and similar to the reaching out for zoning administrator, there was a finance committee, search committee that got created with some individuals asked to be on that and help with the interview process and all. So I offer that idea out since we've had review committees for many different things, and it seems like a good way to go, or at least it has seemed like that. The second thing that strikes me, when the listers went to issue an RFP, we were not allowed to issue an RFP. We had to have it go through the town manager's office. It was absolutely required to be issued through the town manager's office, and I would just ask the board if that has changed since our request, or just what the...
I was gonna bring that up when we got to the portion about the generator, because what we're being requested to do is authorize the issuance of an RFP by the DPW director. Sorry, it's so hard for me to talk with these things. So hold that thought. We'll get to it, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, that was just one of the other items I
Yeah.
wanted to bring up. From your support, thanks.
Okay. Any more on the town manager's report? Stuart?
Stuart Richards, Norwich. Brennan, if you know, what portion of road maintenance, snow plowing, et cetera, is being handled by the town at this point? And what portion is being handled under contract to outside the town?
I don't think I can answer that unless someone else on the board knows the answer to that. I'm not sure what the percentage is between the contractors.
So perhaps you could get back and let the public know, because we were very short-staffed at one point with the ability or inability to do any snow plowing.
And we do have a contract which we have to pay the amount of money anyway if we.
We do have a contract. Do you know
That's right.
what the contract amount is?
Chase.
Yes, but I can't remember the amount.
So, a couple things.
Roger?
So, we weren't able to execute that contract because we didn't have a town manager, so I believe they bill us.
We did.
So we were able to have them sign in the end? Okay, so last I knew, we were going time and materials because we hadn't yet had you, but it sounds like the vendor was willing to wait for you to sign the contract. So there's a dollar amount, there's an up to dollar amount in that contract. We normally have 5 people who plow for us, currently we have 4. So there's some private contractors doing some work for us, but
Thank you.
not much.
Yeah, I'm happy to ask. I'm sure Chris probably knows that off the top of his head. He can give a percentage.
Thanks for following up
I
on that.
can't do it, yeah.
And Roger, thanks for your input.
Mhm.
as well.
Charlotte Metcalf?
Yeah, as I recall, that contract was for certain roads, but not all roads.
Correct. Okay.
So there may be some things that are still lacking because they're not under contract.
Yeah. Okay. And anyone else? Did I see your hand? Yes, sir?
Robert Hardy from Norwich.
Hello.
Hi. This is my personal feeling about the police department. I'd like the town manager and the select board to give them whatever they want, protective gear, cameras. You know, we had a hard time with the last town manager. If you really think about it, they really need that protection. It's getting worse around here, all sorts of different things. The bad stuff in the south is coming north, and I'd just like you to be polite to them and give them what they want. I think it's worth it, and we need more police officers than what we've already talked about. And the other subject I'd like to ask is, why isn't there an American flag in here, in this room? I mean, hello, people. It's the best country in the world, and I think we disrespect it when we don't have a flag in here. And I'll think about how good you got it compared to the rest of the world. And guess that does it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to make a comment on the flag.
Yes, go ahead, Demo.
Scooter
Please.
served this
Dem-
country
Demo?
well as a.
Demo?
Yes, Demo Sophonis, Norwich. Scooter served this country well as a veteran, and this is a very concerning fact for him. On the way in, he asked me that question actually. And Stuart, just so you'll know, there is, in the next room over, there are two flags, American flag and a Vermont flag. Why it's not in this room, I don't know, but they do have them in the other room.
Matt Sweat?
Matt Sweat, Norwich. We do have those two flags. They were moved into the Emergency Operations Center when we swore in the new police chief. So, we don't have two flags, but we do, you know.
Be nice to have one in here.
Yep, we can come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know that'll come up at the next Legion.
So, one more comment on the flag.
Yes.
So, it's concerning to me that in the high school, where they do the Pledge of Allegiance each day, nobody stands for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well,
There's one or two students that do stand, and that is, it's disturbing to me as a former Marine. I don't like it, so, just one man's opinion.
thank you for sharing. We're back to the select board. Now, I think we finished with the town manager report, and we'll go to the next item, which is the RFP for the Emergency DPW Generator. And since Chris Kaufman's in here, I expect that you're on.
Yes, yeah, so Chris contacted me maybe a week or so ago with his request, which I believe has been brought to the select board before. At least he indicated, you know, this is not a new topic, that there is a need in his mind to replace the generators at the facility. I believe he had in December an issue with a winter storm where the generators actually went out. There was no power, and they were not able to fuel up there because of that. So I guess it's, in his mind, somewhat of an emergency preparedness situation where we would want to have that. So I suggested to Chris that this go through this process, and I really don't have a back history on what requires select board approval, but because there is not a set for a designated fund specifically for the DPW, there is a generator fund which I think would be tapped for this. I thought it made sense to make sure everybody was in agreement that this was a justifiable use for that fund, and then if so, again, approve the issuing of an RFP to go out for bid for the equipment. So I think everyone has probably had a chance to see the memo that was in the packet there that probably explains it in a little more detail. But the bare bones are, you know, Chris is expecting that this new equipment will be between $40,000 and $50,000, you know, without having gone out to bid to see for sure. We are aware that we have a little over $50,000 available in this generator designated fund, which again, if this purchase was made, I think he would assume that would be its source for funding. So with that, I don't really have a whole lot more of detailed information to provide, other than this isn't really committing the city to purchasing a generator. It is just having the conversation up front to make sure that once we go out to bid, there is a source of funding for it. And then, again, the RFP process will probably take a couple of weeks to a month, and then we know for sure what the cost will be.
Okay. The question that was raised before was that, I don't know about all prior town managers, but the last one we had told us that there was a format for all town RFPs, and that they had to go through the town manager's office. Even the listers did. I'm not sure why that would need to be the case. I mean, I can see that it might be good to have a consistency, but I think whatever we do should be consistent. So, if we're gonna continue that practice, then I think that the DPW RFP should come from your office, obviously with the input from whatever department is involved, but I don't know if there's any logic to having it come from there, but.
I'm not aware of anything that would require it, an RFP from the town to come from the town manager's office. I could research that. I guess my thought would be for Chris, who has the expertise in this, you know, it could be submitted from him through the town manager if we wanted to do it that way, but I'm not sure we need to. So I guess without knowing more about it, that's my position.
I think it was.
Roger?
I think the context was that, that there was administrative support to ensure that the bid was delivered essentially sealed, you know, electronically, so whatever the sealed version is electronically, and then follow whatever necessary administrative standards and protocol that was put into place. I think also, I'm fine with it going through your office. Like,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Well, as mentioned, so there are two other RFPs besides this that have their own funding sources, so I see those as being critical for the select board to approve. But, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to have kind of a centralized process.
Is this-
My previous municipal experience, if there were sealed bids, it all came in through our clerk's office and then was held until the date of opening and then done pretty formally. And to be honest, I haven't done that directly yet, so.
At the very least, I think it would make sense to have some sort of a templated procedure that each department knows about, and I think it is good to have a process for formal opening of bids so that there can be no complaints. Does anyone else have, Aaron?
Well, also just, in fiscal year '24, you will have a shared administrative position with that DPW, and you might as well, that would be a function of that position. You might as well get started doing it that way now.
Good idea.
Mary?
I think we also have a policy on how bids are administered,
Yeah.
which I don't know if a
I'm
friend
not
has seen that, but I
aware
think,
of it yet, but I'm
but you
sure
can dig
we
that
do.
out, and it's very nicely written, and I think it would be
I'll send it
helpful.
to you.
That'd be great.
But I think whatever we do, we should make sure that all departments and elected officials are treated the same.
So I have a question about the actual
Roger?
generator. Is
Okay.
it appropriate?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Speak up.
Is
Susan.
it appropriate to ask about the generator now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, then we'll get to you.
Okay, so, so this is a propane generator.
I believe so.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so I assume the propane for that will come from our underground storage tanks that we have? Okay,
I
so,
didn't know we had
alright, so I'm
underground
gonna,
storage
so,
tanks.
okay, so I totally
Sorry.
figured, so, sorry. So, I'll say this so we can ask Chris, so we'll have for next time. And it doesn't affect the RFP, I don't think anyway, but I guess as a heads up, I know that we were concerned about the age of these underground storage tanks and, what to do about them as a long-term issue. And so,
It really
I
can't.
think they're separate issues,
Right.
but I think, because we should just maybe talk about it.
Okay.
Because we're sort of adding an asset to DPW, and we also know that there's a larger sort of capital asset conversation that needs to happen over there, and so I think Otter Creek had done some work for us, and Chris had said that that wasn't fully baked for this budget year, but I guess I also want to be cognizant as we add assets or purchase capital assets that we also talk about that bigger capital work. It's a couple $1,000s that we need to either expend from reserves or bond, so.
Couple thousand for what, Roger?
Tank
For
For the actual
reserves,
tank?
yeah,
For the actual
yeah,
tank?
so I'm just sort of, I'm going off a little topic to say that while we sort of authorize this RFP for this new capital asset, I think we should also be thinking about, I sort of want an update about the long-term capital asset needs of that building. And the last we knew was there was a proposal from Otter Creek that was not fully, from a vendor called Otter Creek, that was not fully realized for a couple different reasons.
Okay.
Shouldn't that
Does
sort
that
of
make sense?
thing been in the budget?
Well, no, he had, I asked that question specifically, and he said it was not ready for budget consideration, but he did need a new generator, which is why we're not surprised to have this request.
Yeah, I toured the facility early on in my time here, and he pointed out a number of
Yeah,
concerns or
so you know.
deficiencies that are not inexpensive, so.
Yeah.
Also, Marcia?
Yes.
Also on the generator front, we have $50,000 in designated fund, but Tracy Hall also needs a new generator, as I understand it. This building has a adequate newish generator, but Tracy Hall does not. So we should be thinking about that $50,000 designated fund and how we want to spend it. That's an emergency shelter also for the town, and it's.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's,
a real
I
issue.
guess honestly, the reason I wanted to bring this to the board tonight is I think if we're not comfortable that that would be the source of funding for the generator that would be bid on here with this RFP, we should be aware of that. I mean, if we're not gonna buy it, we shouldn't issue an RFP, I guess. So that is kind of the question for us, is this the priority for that fund, or is there something else?
Well, sorry, what?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think so if there's two generators that form sort of components of wider capital needs for these two physical plants, as they've been called for us, can we see progress on either of that work? So I mentioned Otter Creek as a vendor for work in DPW. There was, I don't even know, the firm that Jeff Martin was working with for Tracy Hall.
Yeah, living building?
Living. So
Marcus something.
I think it's about a month before the results, the answers come back. So maybe in between then, we could see some other
The
work.
interest
From living building, you mean?
No.
No, from this RFP, this
Oh, I see
generator
what you
RFP.
mean. Yep.
So before we just, do what we have to do for a patchwork, maybe we could try to get some work, push some work that is in the works for some of the other capital asset stuff.
So you're suggesting that we go forward with this approval,
Yeah, of course.
and then in the Gulf,
Yes.
we do the investigatory work about where we're going to buy our fuel.
Or just sort of the status of the capital asset planning that had been done for these two buildings. The generator is a piece within all of that.
Well, it sounds to me like this is really just a Band-Aid for that building, and people in this building will go and get fuel there when they need it, because they haven't been able to fuel otherwise.
It's not a fuel question.
It's not a fuel question.
I know it's not a fuel question, but if the generator operates the tank so that people here can go and fill up their cars.
I think propane is not what's used for cars though.
I would,
No,
Right.
the generator
Understand
is working the pumps that are
Right.
used for the
Oh,
municipal vehicles.
okay,
I think
water.
the
I
propane,
understand that, but what
propane's
is,
still in the generator.
what is your point about that, Marcia? I don't understand.
My point is that I think Roger's more global look is great, but right now, this is really a Band-Aid, and yet again, we need to just decide if we're going to buy this one thing that's gonna serve a limited purpose.
Yes, I'm saying yes, we'll vote on the RFP. We will probably, choose to allocate reserve funds to purchase it. But I think because we also, as Aaron pointed out, have, only so much funds for the generator, we should be thinking about the bigger capital questions to the extent that we have reports coming in and they can answer some questions for us, so we can in turn decide differently. So for example, I'm okay not worrying about getting 2 generators if we have a report back that gives us some direction on Tracy Hall and it fits into a package with other reserves funds, for example. But I think I don't want to blow up
Right.
the actual agenda.
Tonight-
You get the spirit of what I'm asking, I
Yes,
think.
tonight we're not worrying about the other generator, we just have.
Well,
to-
I wanna ask about that. I mean, is there any potential for that to be, there to be synergy in RFP, 2 generators at the same time?
So just to be clear, so my understanding of the Tracy Hall was the boiler was the concern. and-
Yeah, but we're talking about the generator
There's
is
also
also, boiler is separately.
Okay.
That's a
So
separate
there-
issue.
There are two pieces of equipment that are concerned.
Yeah, the generator, I believe, is a similar 70s era military diesel generator that doesn't or barely functions. I don't know, Matt, do you know any better about that? Not to put you on the spot.
Sorry. I don't think a lot of attention has been paid to the one at Tracy Hall.
At
I
best,
suspect
yes.
it's in the same shape as the ones that were
Yeah.
at Public Works.
Yeah, and so I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be asking, since we know we have to do that, we just haven't been put on the spot by a crisis yet. But we could be anytime, just the same as DPW. Why shouldn't we be thinking about them together, as we should have been all along, probably?
Well,
I'm just asking that question, I'm not necessarily insisting that that has to be the way we do it.
And at this stage, we were told we would get a report from Living Building.
I
by the
don't
end
think
of
that's gonna
December.
have anything to do with the generator.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
saying, I was wondering
I
if it
doubt,
did,
I
but he
doubt,
doesn't
I
say
doubt
so.
he's thinking about that. He's thinking more about the thermal envelope of the building and its internal systems. I doubt
Yeah,
he's thinking
so
about
that's
that.
fine.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with him recently, within the last 2 weeks, and there is still a report coming. He's still working on it, and I told him maybe after, actually after town meeting, when things are kind of slowing down, maybe, hopefully, that would be a good time to bring that back into the public forum, and that sounded like it would work for him. I'm just, again, this was several weeks ago when I looked at it. I do know that he had created a kind of a proposal for the boiler replacement, and again, it was about $50,000 for that, and there was some electrical upgrades that would go with that. I honestly don't remember a generator being a part of that package.
Yeah, I don't think it is, and I think Jeff Martin did look into the question of whether it was even in the realm of conception to use a battery backup system instead of the generator for
Okay, that's
Tracy
what I was
Hall.
wondering.
And so there's some thought went into it at that juncture. It isn't, of course, because it's a different scale, so I know some thought has gone into it, but I think,
Not a lot.
but not probably anything on a really practical scale. I don't think it's gonna be part of Living Buildings report.
Yeah.
I think it's a separate issue.
Well, I would just say, I know Chris is anxious to buy a new generator so that he has that. I guess I won't speak for him, but he told me that several times, that he was concerned that if we have another issue where the generator's out, it creates, a cascade of problems potentially. So I guess if we're okay, we're not asking for appropriation of money, I just want to make sure people were aware that there was a cost here. If you're good with him issuing the RFP or the town manager, however we're gonna do that, we can do that quickly and get a bids process.
And this is my last,
Yes.
this is my final point.
Roger.
But this is why it's not a matter of who gets to animate whom and who has authority over whom. If you go through a central town manager's office, you would hope, when fully staffed with A-line staff, the question that Aaron asked would naturally arise, where it's like, hey, I have a department head who's advocating for the needs of their department, they need a generator, but this building has the same era generator, and this is actually the building that is designated for where people gather in an emergency. Maybe that should be prioritized over Chris's generator. So regardless, we need generators, we'll issue the RFP, but I think what Aaron is suggesting is maybe a plug for the town manager's office to say, how do we sort of assess Chris's
Well,
needs for DPW as in the wider emergency management question. My suggestion was to blow it up globally, but it sounds like maybe we don't need to do that either.
Well,
So I'm done.
I would just like to wrap this up and
You
say,
can, yeah.
I think that the DPW is keeping all of the town moving when we have some sort of a snow disaster or whatever. And the rest of it. We know Tracy Hall needs attention in a global sense, but this is a standalone issue, I think. And so I'd like to have us call the question. We've all noted that we have bigger problems going forward, but let's, if we have
Can I-
no more,
Can I just make one more comment?
yes, go
So,
ahead, Aaron.
I would just like to plug the possibility, just to have you check in with Chris and say, can we just put the number 2 instead of 1 on the number of generators in the RFP and see if it comes back.
Right.
I mean, it's not getting into the building envelope, it's not a big change that requires a lot of planning or anything else, it's just 2 generators instead of 1 generator and 2 installs instead of 1. And it's pretty much not, and I would like to see that, this be the moment, because now we're talking about 1 designated fund for 2 generators,
Right.
and I don't wanna have to, if we do just 1 generator, then we have to get into the question of, well, what about the other generator? We still have to ask that question. I don't think we can get away from it, so I would just ask you to see if Chris, if that doesn't hugely delay the RFP, why not do both of them?
Well, let me just stop you there for a minute and say, you're all seeming to be conversant with the ill health of the generator at Tracy Hall.
Oh, I am, yeah.
Okay, I'm just not, I don't know.
And I hadn't heard it either. I think what you're suggesting is maybe there's a discount if we purchase 2 generators.
Maybe.
And have 2 installs and the economy.
And also, we would get it done. We would have one process for doing something we've been needing to do for a long time that we haven't done. And we're undergoing that process now for 1 building. Why not actually do it for 2 and actually get it done?
And we have funds.
Mr. Harding, do you have some knowledge about this?
Yes, a little
Oh,
bit.
Hardy, I'm sorry.
Well, with Hardy, Norwich. Green Mountain Power has a program that, they put batteries in your building downstairs, and they're filled all the time by the overhead lines. They're full all the time. And, they work well. As soon as the power goes off, they come on immediately. There's no carburetors, there's no propane, it's just power. And, you get money. I mean, you get a lot of money back, through the federal government and the state. And I would just suggest somebody might call Green Mountain Power and ask about that program. They work excellent. That way you don't have nothing ever goes wrong.
It's a good suggestion.
They're undercover, they can make a room for them up there. They're not very big, but they'll do the job.
Thank you. Charlotte Metcalf?
Yeah, the only question I would have is about scale, because I know people who have them for their homes, and I know they're supposed to be fantastic, but that's for you guys to decide, is whether, town hall is gonna be served
Right.
for 4 days out of power
Yeah.
on battery.
I can address that question.
Go ahead, Aaron.
For Tracy Hall, as a shelter for the people of the town, those batteries would be $500,000 and a big room to cover 4 or 5 days or something
Yeah.
like that, to run that building in all its heat. Especially if we convert it to electric, which, would be probably part of that process. However, to run the fuel pumps at DPW, one of those batteries would probably run for a month. So I would flip that question around and say, do we actually from the emergency point of view of fueling our fire trucks, do we actually need a generator at DPW? We much more need one for the emergency shelter function of Tracy Hall. However, probably practically there's other things that you would want to do at DPW for which you'd need a generator. It's not just the fuel pumps. So probably really the right answer, once you get down and do all the work, is that we need generators at both of those buildings. And that's what I'm suggesting we tackle at this moment.
Well,
Should we table it?
Well,
No, let's
No.
decide it.
let me, if you guys are okay with going forward with an RFP, I can certainly ask Chris. I'm not a generator expert in any way, so I don't know if there are different types of generators, different sizes needed, if it's
Probably.
exactly the same generator that he's gonna seek with the RFP that would also serve. I don't know why we couldn't ask for an a la carte of what would we pay for 1 or what would we pay for 2, and maybe that would, again, answer the question of is there a discount there if you buy 2 pieces of equipment.
so do we have a motion for a more expansive RFP? Mary?
And I'm assuming Brennan would, we're authorizing this, right?
We're authorizing an RFP, and I would say
Authorize the
we should
select board, right, to issue, or authorizing Brennan?
authorizing
Town manager.
The
the
ITM?
town manager
Okay.
to work, how about the town manager to work with the
Uh-oh, we're getting complicated?
DPW director to issue?
I would also say emergency management. I think that's Alex or Matt, right?
Okay, if we're gonna get
I think
more
Alex
fancy,
is
I
the-
need to hear this.
Well,
Under.
let's not conflate what this DPW needs just to get through. And I think their need right now is probably kind of urgent, because they're in the middle of a winter, and I've lost power already, and I'm down here in town, so I think we need to focus on this, and we'll get the information that people seem to want, because we're making the RFP broad enough to ask about 2 generators. And then it's gonna come back to us anyway, right?
Yep.
So we'll see the response and we can go from there.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone?
It does, I think.
Mary?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in making a motion, whether to include the DPW generator and a Tracy Hall generator.
Let's
Is that
just-
what you were thinking, or
Let's
not?
just say 2 generators.
Yeah, I
Or
prefer
2
to keep
generators?
it, because Chris, I might talk to him tomorrow, and he might say, well, it's totally different, apples and oranges. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, I'm guessing. But I don't want to wait until February 8th to come back and say, well, that didn't work out, so we couldn't go for 2. So
Yeah.
if you'll allow me the flexibility, I will try to do what I think you're looking for. And if it just is not going to be a match, it'll just be the 1 generator for DPW that goes out. We can talk more about Tracy Hall and what's needed there. I think it is a bigger conversation probably than just a quick generator
Yeah.
So
replacement.
what if we couch it just as emergency generators and don't say which
Like the S in
it's for?
parentheses.
Well, then we're committed to look for 2 there.
2, right?
Right.
Isn't that what we've been talking about?
Well, but we
Looking
don't,
for 2?
the request here is only for 1 generator. And so that's all we're really talking about. I think,
Well, that's not what Aaron was talking about.
I know, but we don't have a request here for another generator. We have
Okay,
in front of
so
us,
we're assuming that it's a conversation, that we should be having a larger conversation, but in this case, let's just get down to
Right.
DPW 1.
right.
Does that sound amenable to everybody?
If
or-
somebody else made a request for another generator, we can talk about it, but right now, we've got 1 request.
Okay. Well, then I move to authorize the interim town manager to issue an RFP for a DPW emergency generator.
Are you comfortable with that, or? I
There's
can
no
make a-
second in it, though.
No, I think that's
Is there any
pretty
second?
simple.
Maybe not.
Well,
Oh.
I would second it.
Yeah.
A friendly amendment. Can I make it if I seconded it?
Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead. You're the chair.
All right, so you said, I move to authorize,
The interim town manager
And I would
to
say
issue an
and-
RFP for a DPW emergency generator. That's what I moved.
okay. No
Is that
friendly
enough?
amendment. That's enough.
Are
It's
you
fine.
gonna ask for more
I mean-
discussion, or?
More discussion?
The
anyone?
motion doesn't communicate the side conversation, but the conversation has been had for the
Right.
record, so we're good.
I do have one more thing to add, which is, I know, Marcia, you're concerned that this is like something we need to do now, but this is a 20-year investment in a capital piece of equipment that is a significant expense for the town, and we shouldn't rush it overly much. So, and then this is only an RFP, I know we're gonna have more discussion, and we don't have funding for it, so we shouldn't overly rush it.
He
I-
actually does have enough money for it.
Not for
For
2.
one,
No,
not for
for
2.
one, yeah.
So I
That's all he's
think
asking
this
for.
does warrant a bigger discussion, and I don't want us to overly rush because we had one bad storm this year. So that's just, you know, I think,
Would you frame a motion?
I'm fine with
differently?
this motion. I'm not, I'm just
All right.
adding that element in, I just feel that I needed to say that.
And I think this discussion has informed the town manager that we
Yes.
would like to have more information about the generator in Tracy Hall and some options for replacing that.
Mhm.
So may I call the question? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Oh, I'm very sorry, you wanted to ask a question, Cheryl.
It's okay. I actually wanted to make a couple quick comments. Cheryl Lindbergh, Norwich. Might it be helpful that, Brennan, if you haven't had a chance to read the Master Financial Policy book, talks about the town manager office being the purchasing agent for the town. That's apparently where the guidance and directive came when the listers wanted to issue an RFP. So that's what I was gonna just say. And I also wanted to just add that there is a highway garage fund as one of the reserve funds, that perhaps this is also an appropriate consideration for this expenditure.
And a Tracy Hall fund.
Yep.
Roger, you said what?
And a Tracy Hall fund as well.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 6, the new item 6, which is to approve the warning for the 2023 annual town meeting. We don't have a new draft warning, do we?
There was a
Miranda
warning
sent
sent out at about 4:30. Yes, so that encapsulated, we believe, all of the discussion and changes and proposed changes that were made on Monday. And so that is, that's, I guess, the document that we should work off of. Highlighted there are either the changes that were discussed and made, or in some cases highlighted in that we weren't sure if this was completed or not, and needed review.
Okay,
You might have to check against the ones that you submitted in your email.
yes.
I
Okay,
think there's some different choices of language.
okay. So, we're gonna go through these, just, most of them are just already said. Article 1 is to elect the moderator, and we have put out a request for anyone who's interested in applying to be the moderator to please do so, and I hope somebody applies. Article 2, elect the town and school district officers. Article 3, hear and act on the reports of the officers of the town and the school districts. At this point, are we supposed to decide, oh no, we'll do that later. I'm at the warrant, not the meeting.
Are you gonna read the whole thing, or?
I'm just, are we
Oh,
supposed to
sorry.
decide, we'll do that later. I'm at the warrant, not the meeting.
Are you gonna read the whole thing?
Oh, we highlighted that because we weren't quite sure what should be there yet.
Okay.
Maybe that's its own conversation as far as the remote.
Okay, thank you very much for putting that on the board. The very top paragraph says that the legal voters of the town of Norwich, Vermont are hereby notified and warned. This one says, to meet in Tracy Memorial Hall, Norwich at 7 p.m. on Monday, March 6th, to transact business not requiring a vote by Australian ballot. Voting for town officers and for all articles of the warning will be by Australian ballot. The polls will be open Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So depending upon what happens with our meeting with CATV, we may want to change that a little bit.
That's my thought, is that might not be the final language there, but we aren't gonna know that, I don't think, until next Thursday.
So there's a meeting on Thursday with, I think Tom Camden's gonna be there, Neil Odell's gonna be there, CATV will be there, Brendan and I will be there, and we'll be talking about the feasibility of doing some sort of a remote and or interactive. So that part may change. Anything else we should say about that?
No, I just want to point out that language that was originally there has been removed because of
Okay,
the uncertainty of the remote option.
right. And of course, based on the new law, we could actually have it all remote, but I don't think anybody really wants to do that. Okay, so then we're down to Article 5, which shall the voters of the town determine and fix the salaries of the school board. Article 6 is the school district approval to spend $7 million plus. Article 7, shall the general obligation bonds for the school district for the infrastructure of septic. Article 8 is an expenditure by the school district for playground equipment. Article 9 is the town budget. Article 10 is the establishment of a reserve fund to be called the ARPA or American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA Special Reserve Fund to be used for the purpose of holding ARPA monies in accordance with 24 VSA 2804. Anybody who was looking would see that we do have a designated fund listed. I think it's 49 or something, but we've never voted it by the people. So that's what, this is a housekeeping article to do that. Article 11 is an advisory vote. Shall the voters advise the town to consider appointment of a full-time police officer in addition to the 3 budgeted full-time police officers for a total of 5, including the chief? Does that comport with everyone's recollection?
I worry about the clunkiness of shall the voters advise the town, but I'm not gonna copy edit this live.
It's advisory, so.
No, so shall the voters advise the town? I like, are the voters advising the town, or are they advising? But it says, that's fine, I'm not gonna, as I said.
Yeah, who's the town, right?
Right.
Capital T.
It's fine.
Article 12. Shall the voters authorize the elimination of the office of lister and replace it with a professionally qualified assessor hired by the town pursuant to 17 VSA 2651C? That's incorrect, hold on.
So Article 12 is not the motion we made.
No, so the highlighted portion, again, is the
What was that?
suggested
And I-
addition. So that, I think the period stopped after hired by the town, and that pursuant to the 17 VSA was based on the conversation about making that acceptable with
No,
LCT.
I know that was the conversation, but then I made a motion to use the model language provided by the LCT, which this isn't. And we authorized that.
Yeah,
So
that was a
let's just use, I can
Right.
send that directly to someone's inbox, whoever is putting this together.
Hold hard. Based on what we've heard from council, what we can do, because that was just a sloppily written article, but it was an appropriate article. You don't have to have the statute. So we are advised that it's okay for us to correct that, and the way to do it would be a board member would make a motion to accept the article, have a second. Once that is done, we can discuss the deficiency of the language, which is only the statutory site. And then a friendly amendment to the motion could be made to amend the petition article to include the added or clarifying language which is acceptable to the original motion and whoever accepted it. And then we can vote and it's done.
I thought we did that with our motion earlier this week.
Yeah,
Good.
lots of two.
Arnold moved, second by Layton, to amend Article 12 with model language provided by VLCT for the question. Wouldn't that, haven't we?
Yes.
So maybe I can try to answer that.
Yeah.
So I think our attorney said you cannot really rewrite this article that was on the petition, because the article as written satisfies that this is clear. So this is what is being asked of the voters. You don't really have to do anything to it. It can go on just as it is. His suggestion was if you want to make a minor amendment, the way to do that is, as Marcia just described, with this friendly amendment to the petition. But I think if you substantially change what was on that petition article, you've run afoul somehow of what you're allowed to do.
I don't think the model language would count as a substantial change. It does not effectuate the intent at all. We'll move on, because I think this is fine as is, the intent is still there. But,
Well, we can do what we did with the police one, and
we're
we can
just-
reject it, and then you can make your own.
But last time we accepted it and then amended it with the model language.
And then we had the benefit of counsel.
And no, we had the council advice before we did that. It's fine, I'm not gonna fight it. We can move on if that's all right with you.
No, their explanation was actually fuller. Because that was an okay article to begin with, it is okay to add the statute if we want to.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so now, the way this is written is incorrect. It's got to be 17 VSA 2651, small c, parenthesis, small b, parenthesis, 1, end parenthesis.
I mean, you can say, I mean, what about Title 32, right? So, I mean, that's the benefit of this model language, because the model language says, shall the voters authorize the elimination of the office of town lister in accordance with what you just read, and replace it with a professionally qualified assessor who shall have the same powers, discharge the same duties, proceed in the discharge thereof in the same manner, and be subject to the same liabilities as are prescribed for listers or the Board of Listers under the provisions of Title 32.
Well, we didn't vote to reject the petition last week. What was voted, I believe, was to just replace the language, and that's a distinction we can't do.
We voted to amend Article 12 with model language.
Okay,
Right,
so
and
here,
you're
I
saying
think,
that's not
okay, so I think
allowed?
I think I can move us through this if you would like. Can I make a
Okay.
motion?
Do it slowly.
You have permission to give us your ideas.
Okay, well, I will make a motion. I move to reconsider the voter, because we need to have a motion to reconsider the work that we did, right?
Mhm.
So I think, isn't that rules of procedure, I think? So I'll move to reconsider the voter-backed Article 12. So I'm moving to reconsider that decision.
Voter back to Article 12?
Yes.
Yep.
So now so I guess what we're doing now is we're like reconsidering our decision that we did last week where we accepted it and amended it. So now I'm saying that we should reconsider that decision, and I imagine we would vote, and then we would vote on then we would vote to reject it, and then we would vote to put in the new one.
So we have to reconsider it, then reject it?
I think we just rejected.
I think you need to reconsider the decision because there's some folks who want us to reconsider other decisions here, so we should just proceed in this way.
So reconsider the decision that we made last week,
Mm-hmm.
and then vote to reject this.
Mm-hmm.
And then tell me the language that you want for the new motion.
I can read it when the time comes if you'd like, when we get there.
Well, I'd hate to get rid of this.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna have to.
Here, want me to send it to you? Because it's long.
Yeah.
I read it.
If we pass it, I'd like it to for a minute.
Sure, I'm sending it to the people.
So I'm just gonna add this to the
Send it to all of us.
because I'm looking at our attorney's comment here. So again, he says that we are able to submit this as it is because it's clear. But he says, to be clear, the select board can make non-substantive clarifying changes to a proper petition for article. And then again, that is the process that Marcia said with the friendly amendments. So I guess my only concern would be, are we overstepping that we're making a non-substantive clarifying change to a petition article, or is this going further than that by rewriting it? Or are we
It's definitely only clarifying.
changing that because we're going
I
to
think the
reject
addition,
it?
I think the addition of a new statute might be the substantive change.
Right, so we're doing something different here, so I guess.
Right.
Okay.
I've lost my email.
Who am I writing to? All four of you. I mean, it ultimately doesn't matter. Like, if they vote on this,
It's good enough.
it's the same effect will happen with this model language. It's generous to the voters to let them know that you're replacing the listers who do all of these with an assessor who does these things. So, which is why I don't think it's not gonna materially change the outcomes, which is I don't think it's a substantive change, but whatever. So I'm willing to let it go, it's just that we just,
What if we just undid our amendment and let the original petition language stand?
Well,
Sounds like the simplest thing. The attorney has said it'll just fly by itself. It's simple language that anyone can understand. Why not keep it simple? Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could include this first sentence and a half sentence is essentially the same. We could use the petition first sentence, which is like very marginally different, and then all we're adding is the
Citation?
Essentially the citation. I mean, who shall have the same powers, discharge the same duties, that's just out of statute. It's
Yeah,
just
but
quoting out of statute.
I do think this is substantially more information in it, and you are,
But that's more information, you think that qualifies as a substantive change?
I
To just
do.
add more background,
I do, and it's adding Title 32.
which is
What
just
you're-
gonna apply.
You're asking the voters here to eliminate under 17 VSA 2651 CB1. And then this one is additionally adding Title 32. So I don't think it is a
But it says replace it with professionally qualified assessor, and you're just essentially saying the same thing with a few more words, and what title you're allowed to do that under, which is what Title 32 is, isn't it?
it's very different. I mean,
Well, plus didn't council say the original language would stand?
that's right.
So why don't we just keep it simple? Why do we have to
Yeah.
add, subtract, multiply, divide? Let's just keep it the original language and not amend it in any way.
Well, I would like
Only
at
where
least,
amended.
no, I like at least be amended pursuant to 17 VSA, because otherwise, a naive reader doesn't know that this is statutory.
I see.
They don't know that it's even, they've just out of the blue, it's just like anybody could suggest anything, you know?
Right.
I think it needs to be clear that it's statutory.
And that's what we added pursuant to 17 VSA 2651.
At a minimum, I think we should do that.
Are we going to see people question or appeal this because it doesn't have the
Well, we might.
the provisions that the model language provides? Like, is this just like on the bound?
I don't think anybody can look up, I'm not sure about this, but I'm not sure people in the public can look at VLTC model language, can they?
Why not? Oh, because they don't have the,
Because they're not select board
like the
members.
membership
Right.
access.
No,
Well, maybe,
that's
though. That's to the whole town, I think. isn't
no,
it?
that's not what quite I meant. So I'm just saying, so the model language provided by this organization for the elimination of this office is this, right? And presumably this covers
It's
the
embedded.
basis. So if does ours have the same powers? I would say yes, but if you're saying it's a substantial change, then it doesn't.
But it's referring to another statute, and it's talking about hiring a qualified assessor. You're saying replace it here. I think it's just substantially different. Independent,
I want to just, I think we should just put a period after town and myself, but I think you are, again, if we're going with our council who we asked to review this, I think that, we didn't show them the model language, I don't think, and maybe they would have said that's fine too, but they're saying that a substantive change is different than a petition article.
well, I mean, I think the petitioners had an opportunity to look at, maybe they did. I don't know.
I think it's
Select
fine.
board people were involved, maybe they had
Well,
the
at
opportunity to
at
look
least
at.
two former select board members were involved.
Right,
Ms.
so they
Sloan
had
and
the,
Stephen Flanders, so they are familiar with statutes.
So,
Right.
Marcia, you said that sorry, just going back now, you said that statute was incorrect because it looks like it's the same
It's
as
a
in the
difference
model.
between a capital C and a small c, which
Oh,
makes a
so-
difference.
Okay, so you were copy editing, okay. Or, okay, you were, okay. Put
I'd
the
just,
numbers in.
I'd just like to say, just for future reference, I'm a little frustrated that the language that we voted on in our last meeting wasn't, and then said was gonna go before statute didn't go, before council didn't go before council. We voted on the model language, and now you're saying you didn't even show that to the council. So our previous vote was moot, was made moot by the process, which is a
Yeah,
little
maybe we did
frustrating.
Just a
something wrong.
minute, I did send things to council.
You sent the model language to council?
I didn't send the model.
Well, that's what we voted to use, and now we can't use it because we don't have time to include it, and now we're talking about throwing it out even though we voted to use it because you didn't show it to council, and now we don't know that whether or not council would consider it to be
A substantive
a substantive
The
change.
issue was about changing it at all.
I understand that, but we've already voted to change it to this language. And then you didn't show, then you went to council, and you didn't show this language that we voted on to council, and now we don't know whether or not they would have considered it substantive, and you're arguing that it's substantive without the benefit of council to tell us that. So you're basically doing an end run around our last vote. And I'm just saying that I find that frustrating.
I am not doing an end
Well,
run around the
but
vote,
that's the
I
effect.
will I will do this tomorrow. I will send the VLTC language, I will send this once again, and I will ask them their opinion once again. What they have told us all along was not to be rewriting things. The only way that we could change this was to be adding one citation, which is what it's about. The only reason somebody can vote to get rid of listers is because of 17 VSA 2651CB1.
Right. I understand.
So that's what they're saying
so
you can do.
I think the only question now is, like, we voted, we did something, we took an action, so now we need to make sure that what we did needs to be corrected or not, and then we'll go back to this. I was the one who made the motion, and so, and I apologize if we for doing so, if this is what it comes back to. So I think I appreciate you doing what you just said you were going to do, and we'll just move on.
So bottom line, tomorrow I will write to the attorney and say, the board, is it true that the entire board wants to change it with the model VLTC language?
I think the board voted 4-1 to do that at our last meeting,
Okay,
That's my,
believing that it wasn't a substantive change. Based on your previous advice, was the board in error when they did that? We would need to take action pending your advice.
I think it was unanimous.
No, I think Marcia voted no.
so I will ask that question, and then for purposes of the warrant, I will send you all the answer. I'll send you a copy of the question as well as the answer, which is attorney-client privilege. And then, based on the attorney's answer, we will put that as Article 12.
That sounds
So,
So,
do we need a vote to say something like whatever the attorney says is appropriate for Article 12 will be Article 12?
I think the point that I was making is we took an action. Pending further advice, we need to either then, I guess you're right, we should probably take a new action that either seeks to correct what we did or else reaffirms what we did, so.
Do you want to make
Okay.
that motion?
So, yeah, okay, so let me, I move that the board accept, the Article 12 language as recommended, as to be recommended by town council.
Is there a second?
second.
Rob seconds the motion. All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay, and so that was a little sloppy because we didn't say like what language, but I think the discussion makes clear that it's the model language versus what's here.
Yes,
And we're good.
okay.
Thank you.
And the here would be the actual petition with the addition of pursuant to 17 VSA 2651CB1.
Yeah, I think it's
As
either,
written in,
Right.
as written in this warrant,
Okay,
or else the
with
model.
the smaller C.
Yes.
right. Okay. Number 13, shall the voters authorize a 10-year exemption from property taxes to the Norwich Farm Foundation? Under the provisions of 32 VSA 3840. So this was one of the things that I asked council about.
Okay.
And essentially, the Vermont Supreme Court has ruled that the burden is on the person claiming the benefit of the exemption, and it must be shown that the real estate is used exclusively for the purposes of a charitable society. From what I can see at the moment, it looks like the real estate is being used primarily for commercial purposes, so this may actually be a premature application. And this is me talking. 32 VSA 38024, paragraph 4, deals with exemptions of real and personal estate used for charitable purposes and excludes private buildings and lands or buildings used for general commercial purposes. So unless I'm wrong, there's currently no charitable activity going on, so I'm thinking, again, that this isn't ripe for consideration for a charitable tax exemption.
I think the question I had for them was, do the voters have authority to make decisions on this matter? Because this was petitioned. Did we get an answer to that question?
Yeah. Well, the answer was basically that the board should determine that the foundation, the Norwich Foundation, is a society or body of persons associated for a charitable purpose, and it owns real estate used exclusively for the purposes of that society. And then they cited that case.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Mary?
I was just thinking of the Billings Farm, and that they have an ice cream shop, you know, they sell souvenirs and so forth. So, but they all relate to the activities and mission of that entity. So couldn't the creamery be considered in that light, even though I think it's a great, possibly at this point, it's a greater proportion of the activity that does occur there?
I don't know anything about Billings.
So
I mean, in
Well-
terms of their tax exempt status.
I just want to
okay.
be clear on what, I'm sorry. So the attorney said, regardless of the petition, that it is for the board to determine if the 10-year tax exemption is
Hold on.
worthy of its charitable.
So my understanding of it was the petition is accurate. The
Excuse me.
board,
I'm sorry, I know this is among colleagues, but it would be lovely to hear what you're saying, and I'm
Oh,
sorry.
You must
You
hear
know,
what we're
listening
saying.
people doing, thank you.
So I was trying to interpret the council's statement here to Roger's question. So I think it is the board's duty to decide if this is a exclusively tax exempt operation. If so, then the petition is okay. That's really what it sounds like the board is being asked to determine, is whether this meets the definition of this tax exempt entity.
Right.
And it's incumbent, as they said, on the petitioner to prove that that is the case
Well,
in the language that.
well, okay, so in that case then, have we seen any information in order for us to make any kind of valuation? I know that I know that things went before the listers. All I know is I've looked at the website and I've eaten some delicious food. That's all I know about this situation.
Well, I pulled some stuff off.
I think Cheryl has a comment while you're looking.
Just a second, Cheryl. The transfer, the transferee's use of property under the Vermont Property Transfer Tax Return was commercial. That would be Norwich Farm Foundation. The creamery itself was an LLC and now seems to be terminated or expired. And the Norwich Farm Foundation talks about fundraising and being a startup and having capital needs and how they're going to do it, and they're hoping to get the attributes of a farm, which would include an agreement with the Upper Valley Land Trust, getting some cows. I grew up on a farm. I milked cows as a child. I know what a farm is. I know what they have to do, and you know, all the information that I'm seeing seems to indicate that there's a commercial concern going on, and there aren't any charitable things going on yet. So I'm not saying that this might not actually rise to the level of a charitable organization in the future, but does it today?
Okay.
Cheryl.
Cheryl Lindbergh, Norwich, as a lister, the listers are tasked with determining whether or not an application submitted to us meets the tests of tax exemption. That is the job of the listers. We have this in front of us. We did not make a decision at our last meeting. It is our intent to make a decision at our February meeting. There were some draft minutes that came out talking about a few of the pieces of the application. We went to our district advisor, and we were told by our district advisor that we have to make the decision first, that they will not assist us. But they will then review our decision and determine if we have accurately or not determined the tax exemption status of this parcel of land. It is not the select board's responsibility to determine the tax exempt status of this. It is the petitioned article of a group of individuals to ask the town to tax exempt them. They would like this to be on the warning to ask the voters of the town if they will tax exempt this. This is not uncommon. We have had this happen in the past, and it will likely happen in the future. But it's my thinking that this is a petitioned article to put onto the warning that was properly done. And it's the choice of the voters of the town to determine if they wish to tax exempt this parcel. And I hope that's helpful, but the lister's decision won't be out until after you've decided this warning. But again, our decision will go onward as an appeal to the Board of Civil Authority if they don't agree with our decision, and then on to the state, which was what Mr. Siegler did years ago when the listers denied tax exempt status, and it went on and on. So it was fought at a state level.
So what the attorneys say is it appears this may be a properly petitioned article, assuming the select board first finds the statutory prerequisites have been met.
I don't agree with that, but.
Before voting to warn the article, the board should determine that the foundation is a society or persons, and this is quoting from this case.
There's a mix-up of authority being, because the document that came to the listers clearly comes to the listers to make this first determination.
So if this went on the warrant, and if people voted for it, and then the listers voted against it, or determined it was not tax exempt, does the voters' warrant prevail over the listers, or vice versa?
Be my thought that an article on the warning of the voters of the town would take the precedent at that point in time. So the lister's decision will be made, but the vote of the town would supersede anything that we did, because there's other parcels voted by the voters of the town that are exempt by vote.
I'll give an example.
Charlotte
Way back,
Metcalf.
I had solar energy and most people didn't have it. And the lister's position was, you have something other people can't afford. I remember Aaron speaking to the subject at the select board meeting where I said, you know, I didn't want to have to pay extra taxes because I had solar energy. And in fact, the town voted in favor of my solar energy, and so the listers had to accept that.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just say there are two ways to obtain tax exemption. Apply to the listers for it.
Yeah.
And follow it through, or go to the town voters and ask them to exempt it.
Right, so that answers my question. Do the voters have the authority to ask this? It sounds yes. Marcia, you've sort of added.
I didn't, the attorney did.
There's sort of this caveat where we're asked to assume that Norwich Farm Foundation is a charitable organization, I suppose.
This is, the case is the Vermont College of Fine Arts versus the City of Montpelier.
I think.
And Brennan?
I was gonna ask Cheryl a direct question.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, because the timing of this obviously is unfortunate. When did the petitioner or the entity come in and request the exemption from the listers?
Several days before our last meeting. So we brought it to our agenda.
In December, it was recent.
No, January.
January.
Yeah, no, we didn't, we got it a couple days before our meeting and brought it into the agenda because we had had correspondence to look at it. And our draft minutes are out there, people can see them, we've posted those.
I was just curious if, again, this had been done a couple months ago, then we would have had a determination from the listers. It would be pretty simple to
Right.
make a determination. because
The
it's
voters
tough for the
still-
select board to decide if this is a solely tax exempt entity. I don't know how you would do it, to be
They
honest.
don't have the authority to do that. They might have something to do with the article, but not the.
Well, they
exempt
can,
status.
they're being told they have to decide if this meets the criteria to go on as an article. I understand the argument. but
And the
it's not
Supreme
a
Court
decision.
has spoken, so, the Vermont Supreme Court. So unless anybody can say why this Norwich Foundation is a charitable organization at this point in time, I would say it's not right for the board to say this goes on an article. They have a second whack at it by going to through the listers process, and then maybe they develop and become charitable by next year and come back and ask for this at that point. Mary?
So I think they're a federally recognized charitable organization. They have 501c3 status. So are we gonna go up against that? Just
Are they?
because-
That's what I was just trying to
I
look
believe
up.
they are.
Well,
So are we going up against that just because we don't like the nature of how they're organized?
no, we're looking at the Vermont Supreme Court.
But what about the federal designation?
I think,
It doesn't automatically make you a nonprofit.
Right,
But doesn't it make you a
It
charitable?
gives you nonprofit
It is, it does
status.
make you automatically a nonprofit for tax purposes, but are you saying, Cheryl, that it doesn't automatically make you a charitable organization? Is that your point?
You're a nonprofit, it's proven to the IRS that you're a nonprofit, but the question here is this a tax exempt parcel for
under state statute, not
State-
federal
state
statute.
and town decision-making
The
that needs to
feds,
happen?
right, the feds can't tell us about our state laws in terms of what we can say is exempt for property tax. But for other purposes, like the IRS, they can say this is charitable or whatever. Manu, did you have?
Yeah, Manu Desone in Norwich. I'm not involved with the foundation or the farm. So I just want to say, it would seem to me that anyone involved in that organization should have been told that this was going to come up so they can actually be here to defend it. So I'm not sure if anyone reached out to them to be here.
We didn't.
I would say the
reach out
same
to
thing
them.
about any other group who's looking for funding. If this was going to be the situation, I would have expected anyone to let them know to be here, because from their point of view, it's probably taken care of. Because it was voted on last, well, not voted on.
It wasn't voted on,
It
it
wasn't
said
voted
we
on,
were
you're
gonna
right.
continue.
But anyway, I'm just saying, it would have been the reasonable thing to make sure that one of them is here to, seems like you're trying to figure out what's what without the benefit of that group of
I
residents.
know, we don't have a secretary, the best we can do is put notices out. All right, so I think we have to call the question on this one.
So,
well, do we have a motion?
God,
Nope.
I mean, what did we do last time with this? We did nothing we just took no action on this, we were gonna get more information.
Yeah,
Right.
we heard from whoever was here, and
So, look, I'm gonna read this again, just because I think this is the most germane part from the attorney. So it says, before voting to warn the article, the board should determine that the Norwich Farm Foundation, quotation, is a society or body of persons associated for a charitable purpose. And that it, quotation, owns a real estate used exclusively for the purposes of such society. So I guess that is the question being asked of the select board to
Sorry,
put this on.
used for what?
Exclusively
You're
for
exclusively
charitable
for the
purposes.
real
Purposes of that
estate.
society. So
Right.
is
purposes
every
of
piece-
society, which is
The
education.
real estate has to be used exclusively for the purposes of the society. So we've got 6.32 acres, as I understand it from the deed. On those 6 acres, there's a creamery and associated other buildings. And as far as we know, the only thing that's going on is a commercial creamery.
Yes.
This is unfortunate.
Well, I can again reiterate that those specific topics are in front of the Board of Listers to make that determination. And that's what the form that they completed and all the documents they're completed.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with what they're saying, I just think they directed it to the wrong board.
Mary?
Well, it could be that if we don't put it on this year, there might be a few more charitable activities, and they can try next year.
Right,
And they'll have the benefit of the listers, analysis
right.
as well. So,
Or the professional assessor.
So,
well, whatever,
So-
whoever's professional assessment is.
if you look at the public facing materials, it's like, it's very clear that there's charitable and educational intents
For the future,
for the future. I mean, they literally say the future.
right. So it's not now, and we're looking at now. So
Well,
I don't know.
We're looking at the next 10 years of the future, but.
That's true.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
do you-
actually think that they fit the definition that you read perfectly, and I'm perfectly happy to vote to put this article on. Because it seems to me that they are gathered together for educational purposes. The creamery, yes, is producing a commercial product, but that's, as somebody said, true of every nonprofit institution that has a shop or any kind of output that doesn't make a profit, but funds the organization. And it may be a little blurry in that they have an association with this creamery, which is, individually they're making their living that way. Sort of, that's a profit. I don't know, nobody's getting rich. It's fine, it seems to me.
So who owns the creamery?
I think that's probably a little blurry, because the equipment belongs to I think it's a blurry situation. And I think it's been a blurry situation, that's why there's a lawsuit with the land trust, and, it's been it's a tough situation, but I think they fit the definition. I don't think we have standing really we could block it, but it's a citizen petition that seems in the ballpark. I would say it should probably go forward.
I think that it is not land, real estate used exclusively for the purposes of the society at this moment. At this moment, it's a creamery with a foundation holding the title to 6 acres, hoping to make it a much bigger charitable organization.
Sure, and if they build a nuclear power plant there next week, we can probably revoke their nonprofit status.
I don't think we can, but anyway, if you want to make that motion, you may do so, and
Okay, I move to accept this article in question.
is there a second?
Second.
Rob seconds. Can we call the question, please? Rob?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes,
Marcia, no. All right, the next
So that will go on as written.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one, I'd like to skip to the school, because we have people here. It's not really the school, it's about the tax question, and I know that we have people here who must be here for that particular reason. And I don't know how long we'll take to get to the rest of it. So that article number is going to be,
On the 30s.
it was removed.
Article 40, right?
Article
No.
40? No.
So
39.
39
The timing.
was as written with the change to move the 4% collection fee to 8%, because that was, I guess, the existing amount, right? So we decided we had to leave that intact, and then Article 40 is the one that looks at actually changing the collection
Right.
rate.
Yeah, we
So
moved,
that's how those two fit
we moved the
together.
date 8 days.
So for Article 39, it's changing the date of the collection of taxes
Let me
to
go more
August
than that.
30th. And then the rest of it is just about the delinquents' taxes, which is 8%, and that's
8.
pursuant to statute. All right, is there any more conversation about this? Tom Camden.
Tom Camden, I live here in Norwich, 1183 Union Village Road. My colleague here, Neil, and I are on the school board, and we're just here to discuss this article, and thanks for considering it. And actually, I'm sorry I have to ask, I hope that you may reconsider it too. Welcome to town, and Brennan, and please pass along thanks to DPW for keeping the roads clear for buses. I unfortunately didn't realize this was coming to a vote until the day of the meeting on Monday, so apologies for coming at this point in time. But with I did watch the video and had some further conversations with the business administrator of the school district, Jamie T. And there are some concerns with pushing the date forward these days in terms of what would the timeframe be for the school district to receive the funds from the taxes and the ability for the district to pay payroll and to meet its obligations moving into the new year. So it's as simple as that. I don't think it's crystal clear in any way. Jamie said that there's possibilities that there could be reserves to cover costs that might arise before the delivery of the funds that are received, but not knowing that, there's also the chance that we wouldn't be able to make bills and payments such that we might have to call on emergency loans, which obviously would not be an ideal situation either. So that's the perspective of the school district on that, and just wanted to ask whether it would be reconsidered to move it back to the August 15th date, which I think has been in place for a number of years, and also just to understand what the rationale is for moving it forward and what problem that solves, I guess.
My understanding, imperfect as it is that the, basically there were people making mortgage payments that had double payments as a result of this, and they had to have their money refunded from the town, and that the auditors had a problem with that. Now, this was not reported prior to last year, as far as I know. And then I've asked Joyce if there was any problem this year, and I can't remember. I don't think she said there was any problem this year. So there seems, from what I can glean from asking a lot of questions, it seems like the only problems that came up seem to be last year. And we have our treasurer here, could maybe add some more light to it, but I guess my concern about it was if we push back the date, do we have a payment plan or something that we pay to the school on a regular basis, and how does that impact those payments? So one or both of you who can answer that, or Neil?
Yeah, I can, if you, I'll let you guys answer it if you're.
No, you
Okay.
you're the treasurer of the business.
Just quickly, the history on the collection of taxes is that roughly 80 cents right now of every dollar we collect is the school's money. So every dollar that comes in, 80 cents belongs to the school. Those dollars start coming in right after the bills go out. I know people that pay promptly, and it goes on and on. So money is coming in shortly after the bills are issued, and it has been the tradition, in order to avoid expense for the school districts, to start sending money over throughout the collection process. So maybe by the end of July, the beginning of August, a calculation would be made, we've collected this much money, 80% of it is the school's, here's a check to the school. And it was on your warrants, and it went down. As the end of the collection came, you look at it again, not everybody gets to pay, they don't all pay promptly, but the majority of it does, and you again do a calculation of how much do we owe the school district of their money that we've collected. And it gets moved over through a warrant, and that's the process. Having it wait until after all taxes are collected has never been the effort that we wanted to have between the school and the town. If the state collected the school money, it would be great, but they don't. And so it stays with the town to be the ones to collect that money, but we're just holding it on behalf of the school. So with that said, I believe that there is a way to come up with a payment plan. There were payment plans in the past. They seemed to be there with Hanover, who also pays to Dresden and all, but not on our side. We seem to come up with lumps and send it over. Whereas, the town of Hanover is every 2 weeks making a payment to the school districts. So that's what I can share. I don't know if that's been enough help to explain it, but.
Yes, Roger.
The only new information, I said everything that I could possibly say and articulated as best as I could at our last meeting. The only new information I had was, I believe that the town is required, the funds are required to be released to schools 20 days after the tax due date. So I think last year was August 12th, so we would have been required to, I think by September 2nd, make sure that the school had its funds, and which we've always been able to do, certainly. So I think I appreciate Cheryl speaking to a tradition or a relationship. You know, we're still in our requirements. This 18-day change is because we have unique challenges. It would hopefully solve some of the challenges on our end, while admitting that it requires ongoing conversation and possibly new challenges on the school's end. So.
It doesn't sound like we've experienced those challenges this year.
Well, I've been chair for 2 different town managers, and they have both expressed challenges with this deadline. So
Really?
it's anecdotal data, it's my experience, but that's what I have for you. I think, you know, so.
Okay, Tom?
So my concern moving forward on anecdotal data, even though mine is somewhat anecdotal as well,
Yes,
I think we
that's
need to
true.
look at the prioritization of what the challenges are here too. I don't know how many people there are that are not able, or we're having issues with these refunds, but if you've got an entire school district that is not having its funds come in a timely manner, that is then having to take out emergency loans, that is then gonna cost the town more money because of the interest rates on it, I think that there's a balancing act that we need to consider here, and I do think that the additional days that we're pushing this up against August 30th, I don't know how many people pay taxes early, I wait till the last minute. So it's on time, but it's at the last minute, and that doesn't allow for an easy scheduling of the transfers to the school district, so. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd say,
the way
if
to
you're gonna
plan.
consider this, let's consider it in the future year, when we've got some actual data to put behind what we're considering. Right now, if this is a crapshoot, we could put the school at default. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me at this point in time.
And in fact, wouldn't we be we'd be incurring more debt for for people in town if we had to get loans?
Madam Chair, it is a fact that this date will come, that the remittance from the income sensitivity will have come to us, so that we would have the ability to issue most of the people who are affected by the tax bills. Like it is, so you could look at the remittance dates, like I think they come in 2 batches generally from what I understand. If you want further evidence, it can be provided, but I don't see a need, as I said, I don't see a need to reconsider this. Like,
So Roger.
18 days, the recommendation was the middle of September. Hearing some of the evidence that you brought forward from Jamie Teague made that clear that putting a tax deadline in the middle of September would be overly burdensome. So we are doing this to ensure that the remittance of the first payment would come. So this is, that we're not talking about a schedule, we're not talking about the ability of the town to float the school. That is a management decision, and I trust that the management we have will take these conversations up. But right now, like this will do the most good for our end.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true, Roger. and
We
I
have no
don't know-
motion to reconsider, Madam Chair, right now, so I don't know if you want to
Roger,
make one.
We're discussing. I'm just wondering if you have evidence of how many people were hired.
We had a very extensive presentation on this, and we had a lot of, we can refer back to the tapes, we can refer back to the files as Aaron has requested for the frequently asked materials that were put together. We can bring forth all the data, but I don't think the position would change, right? There's a certain datification that is unnecessary here.
Well, I'm
I'm
not sure.
sympathetic to the school. That's why we're only doing 18 days. This will ensure something for us. That this will ensure that our house can get in order.
I think it does matter how many people were harmed, and this year there doesn't seem to be any people. Aaron?
So, I don't remember the numbers, but there are a couple of things. This it seemed quite clear when we first talked about it. There were plenty of numbers, there was a repeated history. I don't want that previous discussion to just somehow get overwritten here. It was absolutely clear that this was a problem for the mortgage escrow, and that we were,
For our
our end of things, and that we were doing, possibly illegal, certainly improper, rebates and things that were sort of, that we needed to, that didn't match our financial policy. Also, at that time, the school, Jamie T keeps coming up, was asked and said that this change to the middle of September at that time would probably be fine. Now, I'm not saying, it sounds like it's not absolutely clear, one way or the other, but we have a clear problem on our end, and we're already moving it back, halfway. I think moving the tax collection date till after we know what the state refunds are going to be, so that escrow can figure those numbers correctly, is sort of an obvious necessary technical fix. I mean, why would you want to force people to pay their taxes before the state numbers come in, so that then their escrow is wrong? It just doesn't make sense.
I understand that.
So
I'm
we
just
should fix it.
wondering why you think there hasn't been a problem this year?
I don't know the answer to that.
Marcia, we had people come.
I know, I remember.
We had people come, like some
Yeah, there
half
was
tears
public testimony last
about
time.
the confusion.
I remember that.
Like,
That was
I
this year.
suppose like that
Okay, one at a
testimony
time.
is only anecdotal too, right?
Okay, so, I think one or both of you had your hand up, and then Cheryl.
Defer to Cheryl first.
Okay, Cheryl?
So, trying to say this, good tactfully. Roberta was there for 17 years in the office, and there wasn't this issue. And things were handled consistently and carefully and compassionately to the taxpayers of Norwich. And that didn't continue after Roberta retired. And things got to be complicated and somewhat messy. And it was the best that anybody could be doing, but it caused the concerns of credit balances, and the auditor came in, and things like that were brought forth. But when the town was handling it for 17 years, it was handled the way that it was felt was the right way to do things, and it went smoothly. And it's really not the mortgage companies, it's the third-party company that wants the data to feed to the escrow companies.
Right.
And they want it too soon.
Right.
And they feed it too soon. If we didn't utilize the third-party companies and worked strictly with the property owner, and they work with their escrow company, and these things would get done more carefully and correctly. But it is complicated when we send a data file 2 days after we bill taxes
Right.
to this third-party company,
Right.
who then sends that data off to the escrow companies, and they work with that instead of what is needing to be worked with. So,
Okay. Neil, did you have something to offer?
I do. I do want to be clear that I do think that this adjustment of the date, sorry, Neil Odell, Norwich, also a member of the school board. I do think that the adjustment of the date would have an adverse impact on the school system. If I just look at the history of payments that we have received over the past couple of 2 or 3 years, it typically comes middle to end of August, which is great timing for us because that's round about when payroll hits, right at the beginning of the school year. To be clear, if we didn't receive the payments, or we didn't receive enough in payment for us to be able to cover expenses, it's actually the school district's obligation to borrow to make up for those funds. It's not the obligation of the town, right? So essentially what we're doing is then adding an increased tax burden on residents for the borrowing, for the adjustment of a date that I have yet to hear articulately addresses a problem. And I will speak only for myself, but I'm pretty sure that the Norwich School Board would be more than welcome to engage in a study of this issue and work collaboratively with the select board to try to find a date that satisfies the issues that you guys are seeing, but also make sure that the school is kept whole on the tax dollars that they're due. But we haven't been provided that opportunity. The timing on this just seems a bit rushed to get something done. And so more than happy to work with you all on this, but we don't have the time to do that now.
That seems reasonable. Roger?
The other issue, it's not just the problem that Cheryl more particularly explained than what we were trying to when we were talking about sort of escrow of mortgages. It's that because you're required to send out a tax bill 30 days before the due date. And so the income sensitivity adjustments don't get made, they get made after, this is my understanding, after that tax bill is sent, right? And so then people get a revised tax bill, but they're paying on their first bill. There's a large number of that to occur. Like there's plenty of people who make under, what is the threshold, $140,000, $170,000 in this town. So it creates these set of complications, and so we have to issue against best practice, depending on who you ask, these refunds. And so not only does it create these burdens in a difficult time, but it also creates sort of this question of like floating funds or issuing monies that may or may not actually be ours to do. So that is the tension. And so, as I said, I'm very sympathetic to the school's needs, but that's not a good practice. We can't be in the position of doing that, and that's why we adjusted it. So if you want to talk to the state, I think Norwich seems to like have that power to change when the remittance happens, then perhaps so. But we're just trying to work with what we can. Unless we have a motion to reconsider, I don't know how much more I can say.
You don't need to. Neil?
Good.
Go ahead, Tom.
I'm just going to reiterate what is being said here. I come back to the point where there's been no exchange or discussion on what effect this could have on the school district. I know Jamie Teague was mentioned. I talked to Jamie Teague about it. According to her, this was a 2-minute conversation in passing with our former town manager and our former finance director over a year ago. 2 minutes that wasn't followed upon once before this was brought to the board. I can understand. I would sympathize with the people that are having issues with that. But give us another year to actually study to figure out, it's a large one, is it 5, is it 10 people? We're talking about a potential chance that the school district would not have funds and would need to open an emergency loan. Is it worth taking that risk, having absolutely no data to back it up? We keep saying large numbers, that's not data. Let's just give it a year, do some collaborative thinking on this, come up with a solution that works for both parties. This is putting us in a situation that we could be in a big trouble come September if we don't have the money to pay payroll, buy supplies for the students, etc.
I am convinced that this is a serious enough issue that we shouldn't be rushing into it, and I'd rather have a special meeting if we determine that there is a real problem. We could do that, but why would we have to do it right now? And I do think data drives everything, and we need to have some more data, and we have to understand what this means. I mean, it's penny wise and pound foolish to help a subset of people and harm on the one hand by doing something that's proposed here, and then cause everyone more taxes if this is a, train wreck because you don't have enough money to pay your payroll.
I certainly agree it's troubling that a large organization can't float for 18 days of a difference.
Well, Roger, I think.
I agree, it's certainly troubling.
I do take slight issue with that, right? It's not that we can't flip, this is money that's due to the school district through, that the voters voted for
Right.
and approved, and so
But legally, we have until September 2nd to get to you.
Well,
Right.
I think we have.
We're following the law.
Roger, the problem here is, I think, it sounds to me like we haven't had regular tax payments. We've just done it on a sort of workable arrangement that's been a bit fluid, right? Neil?
Yeah, so to be clear, it has, if I look at the dates, right, it has been fluid but consistent. So the payments have typically come between the 15th and the 30th of August. There's been a little bit of wiggle in those dates, but primarily that first payment, and it's been a substantial payment. It's been anywhere in the neighborhood to $2 to $3.5 million.
And
So it's
clearly-
not insignificant for us.
And clearly, we're not gonna be able to do that if the due date is August 30th, and we're putting back our,
No, I would say that's not clear at all, since the taxes don't come in on August 30th all at once. As Cheryl said, they come in as they come in.
But
And we
do we
don't,
get 2
so we,
million?
like everything else about this discussion, we don't really know what the actual impacts are gonna be. It's likely that less will come in by the middle of the month than did when the due date was in the middle of the month, but we don't know the actual numbers. So let's
you've
not
made-
overstate that.
no, you've made a very good argument for holding off until we do know all of the data.
My issue with this whole conversation actually is this is another casualty of our staffing problems in town of Norwich. And if we had not had to scramble to get what we could, get the budget done and get other things, manage the town without a town manager, we almost certainly would have had this conversation months ago, and we would have, and we would not have just said, okay, well, we'll deal with that when we're doing the warrant, which is exactly what we did in August or whenever it was. We said, oh, we know we need to do that, let's not forget to do that when warrants come around. It's like, well, that's not a way to solve a problem. So
So the way to
So-
solve the problem is to get some data, so let's
well,
do that.
is to have a discussion, and unfortunately, we have mismanaged it, and we put it off until the last possible minute. And that I think is the real crux here, in
Neil?
an
And, yeah,
important
so
way.
to be clear, we are more than happy to work with the select board on this issue. But, yeah, and I'm sorry for the staffing issues that have caused us to get to this point. But I just think that the time is not on our side on this one, and, I would respectfully request that the board reconsider this change in the warrant article so that it can give us the time to sit down and work on this collaboratively.
So let's just be clear, the harm that is proposed to, or purported to happen, happens in August. We are in January, and so we don't have to right now put this on the warrant. We could have a special meeting and vote it later, giving us
Could
some
we?
time.
I mean,
giving us-
this is the warrant.
This is the warrant for the annual meeting. It is perfectly acceptable to have a special meeting for anything that you need to
I
have a
see.
special meeting for.
And
And we could have a special meeting after we get some data, but before the deadline of the 30th, I suppose. Yes, Neil?
I believe that is an accurate statement. The challenge you have is, there is a cost associated with having a special meeting,
Right.
especially one that's really only gonna consider one warrant article potentially, right? So it's the cost of holding another election.
Well, it's Norwich. I bet people will be petitioning things to go with that article.
Sure, it may be more fun than we anticipate, right? But I do want to say that there is a cost associated with doing that.
It looks like there's a cost no matter what happens here. It's just who is assigned the cost and how great it is. And that we really don't know yet.
Agreed.
Tom?
So if you were to move ahead with that, is the recommendation that you would then keep the original dates with a special meeting to consider a forward date of August 30th later? Because that would seem like the more logical approach to me, because then you'd be able to get the data on these people who are being affected by it. And if there is not a big enough issue, then we just leave it as
But-
it's been.
That was my
Madam-
suggestion.
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
don't
Madam Chair.
think any amount of numbers are going to convince our colleagues that those numbers are more important than the school district's needs. And I understand why they're saying that. They are the school board, they have to advocate for their needs. But my position is that we have to advocate for our own needs as a school board. We're saying that this has created
We're not
a
a school
set
board.
of, or for the select board, I'm saying that this has created a set of unique challenges for our staff. For
not hearing that from
for
our
several
staff.
years, because there are none right now, because they're
I
not
beg
here,
to
as Aaron
differ with-
alluded
I beg
to.
to differ. We have
So
an
we
interim
have-
finance
so-
director who's experiencing all of it.
So I'm saying that since Roberta Robertson left, we have struggled with this, right, as a community. We got a presentation, we chose to act on it. And so I appreciate, everyone saying, well, how do we weigh those interests? But I don't think that our interests will ever matter as much as the school's interests. And I think we just need to accept that, they have their advocacy, and then make a decision, and then that'd be okay. We're asking for 18 days in order to make sure that when the remittance from the state comes for income sensitivity, the revised tax bills can be prepared in time, so that there are not overpayments. That is the issue. That's all we're trying to do.
Roger, if.
And I'm done.
Thank
I've
you,
tried to
Roger.
advocate as best as I could,
Thank
and
you,
I'm
Roger.
sorry for upsetting anyone. That's just what it is.
Thank you, Roger. If the interim finance officer were here to tell us that, yes, she was finding the same thing, and could give us some data, I'd feel a little better. Neil Odell.
Obviously, I'm here to advocate on behalf of the school, right? I'm an elected school board member, but I'm also elected by the voters in the town of Norwich. So I'm also very concerned about those folks that are having trouble paying their tax bills, right? So to the extent that that is an issue, I am concerned about that just as much as Roger and all of the members of the select board are. And I want to work on a solution that works well for everyone. I just think that there's more data that needs to be presented, at least to me as a school board member. I feel uninformed on the true scope of the issue at this point in time. To be able to suggest that moving the date from what it had been previously is reasonable, prudent, and is gonna produce the proper end result. But I care just as much about Norwich taxpayers as I think any member of the select board does.
Well, I think we all have to remember, it's all the same people that we're talking about here. Stuart had his hand up.
I was first, but I defer to Cheryl.
No, thank you.
Cheryl Lindbergh.
Again, I think some of this could be softened if the town would calculate the amount of taxes for the school they've collected along the way before the due date.
Right.
And send money over to the school and not wait until the end and then send over 7 million or 8 million or $10 million. I think if you think about the Dresden School District, which is really large, and the Norwich School District smaller, but still a lot of staffing and dollars, they're operating from July 1st until they get money from us to pay those bills and pay the payrolls. And I think that if there could be a commitment made to turn funds over along the way, that would be helpful.
And does
Aaron?
does that require any statutory action or change, or is that something we can commit to do in an internal
It's not,
It's management.
it's
select
not
board management
statutory.
decision level?
It would be a good collaborative arrangement. And again, a payment schedule that's based on collections only until the end when
It's a
the
management
payments are all in. I
decision,
think
yes.
there's nothing that can't be determined by the select board and
Gotcha.
approving that in the warrant.
Demo?
Yeah, I think you really need, Demos Saphonis of Norwich, I think you really need to keep it simple if it's worked for 17 years. And I do appreciate the remarks that have been made about the staffing problems, because we all know what they were. But I do think that if you have a school board that is willing to sit down with the town to discuss this, and they haven't had the opportunity to do so, I think you need to give them that opportunity. Sit down, work it through, and then next year, if you have to make a change, make a change. But for now, keep it simple, do what you know historically has worked, and don't take, for example, staffing issues that you had because you had a turnover of people going through that revolving door for whatever reason. We're not here to blame or anything like that. But you cannot punish the school because you're making changes to what you think is gonna work for the town, when very simply things worked very nicely for so many years. Just talk to one another, get together, have meetings, and keep it the way it is for now.
Thank you, Demo.
Thank you.
All right,
One
board.
more.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Stuart.
So, Stuart Richards, Norwich, I really think that you should pay close attention to what both Tom and Neil have said. I think it's important that we listen to their concerns and that we educate ourselves, both from the standpoint of what the school needs and what our other constraints are. But I really, just as one member of the public, I've been listening to the discussion, and it seems to me that both Tom and Neil have made a very reasonable, they've got a reasonable approach that I think that we should follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So board, we have to either just accept this or have a motion to modify it or take it off. We could have a motion to table it to another year, get some data, sit down with the school system and actually work this out and see what's the reality and what will work for everyone. Because everyone means all the people in town. All right, let me start this way. Is everyone happy with Article 39 as written? Yes or no? Just an informal vote.
I don't think you can
Look at
straw
Article
poll.
39.
Sorry, it's the change of the, is it 39 still? Sorry.
Yes, 39.
39,
It's the
okay.
change to August 30th.
Just the changed article about the timing.
It's the August 30th tax
Okay.
date.
Nothing will stop the management from decision to pay as funds come in. I mean, I think there's a lot to say about that too, but I think that's really in the prerogative of the town manager's office.
So
To Cheryl's point.
my question was, are people happy with Article 39 or do they want to take it off the warrant for this year? Mary?
Well, I'm just feeling a lot of doubt about it now. So,
I
but
am.
I also feel empathy for
Yeah,
the people with
Some
the
people
escrow accounts who will be impacted by this.
Right, remember, these are people typically with a fixed income or have some other reason why they're, obviously they're under an income threshold already, and then they have difficulty making oversized payments for the first half of the year and undersized payments for the second half of the year. And
Right.
we heard some very, strong testimony to
Held
that effect.
statements.
right, because the best practice is to issue a credit, not to issue a refund, right? And if you're issuing a credit, that doesn't help someone's,
Right, the
doesn't
credit
help
comes in
them
the
split
second
their
payment.
cash, right?
But we do have time before August comes around again. So we could actually spend some time and work this through and have a special meeting and decide it later if we decide that that's the right thing to do.
My feeling is that we spent the time and we worked it through, and that we've already made a decision. And I think the point that Cheryl has made, that we could be paying money sooner from, on schedule, is a good one. And I certainly approve of that.
Rob?
Well, I'm curious as to where payrolls fall in August. Because that seems to be one of the critical issues, is you have enough money to pay staff in August, and as somebody who used to work there, the staff is pretty small until the very end of August, and at what point do they get their first paycheck?
Can you answer that question, Neil or Tom?
Yes.
Treasurer.
Treasurer, can you answer that?
You're not just working with Dresden, but also working with the Norwich School District.
Right.
I can tell you there are payrolls that are paid throughout the summer because some
Yeah.
opt to keep their payrolls steady
Yeah.
and don't take a June payment of all the rest of their
Right.
money and continue to receive them throughout the summer. There's retirement monies that are paid out. So I would say they do continue, they do ramp up by the middle of August when staff has been brought back. That first big payroll typically hits towards the end of August, right around there. and then they're all on board for the beginning of the school year. Well, the beginning of the school year can start at the end of August. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are the payrolls you're trying to meet, but payables are still being paid.
And they're still, they've always been paid during that period of time, July, August.
They do.
So we'd have to be
So-
relying on people paying their taxes earlier than August 30th to come up with $2 million to pay the school by August 30th.
Again, I think it's, I think that working with the school board to work this out would be the best. As I see both sides, I'm treasurer of both by default, and I see both sides of what goes on, and I have always urged the town to get funds over to the school, and I worked with Roberta to do that. There was not a problem. And then April over at the SAU would work with me to work with Roberta. We all had that collaborative effort, and it was pretty straightforward.
So,
Roger?
I think you've asked for a motion for reconsideration, I think,
Yes.
and I haven't heard one.
I'll make a motion to reconsider the article for this warrant and remove it for this year. For March of 2023, pending further investigation of the ramifications of a change in
Well-
collaboration with the school district. Is there a second to the motion?
Could you say it again? Reconsider Article 39 pending further
Pending
investigation?
further investigation of the ramifications with the school district. Is there a second? Going once?
It's not an auction.
I know.
Saying. It's hard, I think this is a very hard one.
Yeah, I don't feel
We're really
great.
struggling with it because we've got vulnerable people who are affected, yet we don't want to hold up hundreds of thousands of dollars
And
and
affect
mess
hundreds of
the,
thousands.
mess up the school budget. So I don't think we don't really have a good solution to this. I mean, we can go with the status quo and it will kind of roll along, and the people who are vulnerable will be in a bad situation again, but the school district will be fine.
But they wouldn't if we get this organized earlier.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is an opportunity to collaborate, you know, if we remember and we follow through, maybe. I mean, that's also not, you know, it's not clear. But I just think that that's why you know, when you're trying to push on this, yeah, we can't go round and round on it, but it's hard to make this decision, that's all I'm saying.
Mhm. So there's no second to the motion? Motion fails. Dino?
I was gonna ask if you would, if one of you could possibly reconsider and make that second motion, only because, number one, your staffing is ramping up now, you're starting to get back to normal. You've all done, you know, your work and you've listened to the community, and things are starting to shape up. You have to start believing in one another, school department, town of Norwich, and you have to start working together like you always have for years. So I would respectfully ask one of you to change your mind and go with a second on this motion.
Roger?
Madam Chair, I will say, I don't think we've really worked that closely together for years, which is sad, right? I think there was that recent action where we were to sort of have these liaisons, right? So we would probably know each other's work a little earlier, right? And sort of know what was bubbling up, but then we meet on the same day. So like, I don't know if like structurally something can change in budget season. I think the easiest, I think we need to figure out like a structural mechanism to actually collaborate, or just even be informed better. And so that's a future agenda item, but it really, I think we need to really start doing that, because this is like
I think there are a lot of people who've been in town for decades who who can probably speak more authoritatively about how well the school has worked with the board. But I think at this point, we have to just move
Just
on.
ignore that passive aggressive comment directed towards me. But
No,
okay.
no, Roger, it isn't. It's a
Okay.
truthful comment that
Okay.
a lot of people have spent a lot of time here. So it's something that we have.
So I will rephrase, Madam Chair. I said it's my assessment that we could stand to have more positive relationships and have more collaborative projects. And so we should think of a mechanism to do that. So I'm happy to think on it, and we should all think on it, because like none of us feel good right now.
I agree with you, and I think we could have done that with this project and done it in the spring probably and had a good result. Tom?
I agree, we should be working together better too. I think we're taking the first steps. I understand Aaron's gonna start coming to the meetings and whatnot.
When we don't have select board meetings at the same time.
Well, we can figure out some other things. It's not always at the same.
No, it's not always
No.
at the same time. We've just had a lot of select board
Yes,
meetings.
quite. But we can move in that direction too. So we look forward to that. We look forward to more ways to work together too. I like Timo, though, I do wanna, I wouldn't even just remove the article, just put it back on, because and with the same old date that has been on there, with the pledge to move forward to get this data, everyone in this room has agreed that there isn't enough data behind this decision. We're taking a gamble moving forward with this by pushing the date forward and waiting and seeing if there'll be enough funds there for the school district. Why do that when we have the opportunity to put on the warrant article that has been on there for the past, I can't even count how many years, and then have this commitment to get together and do the data search between now and the time that August hits, and then consider a special meeting to change those dates. But at least if you find that the data doesn't back the need to move the date forward, you've got the warrant article on there with the date that seemed to have worked up until the last 2 years, while still looking ahead to do the data collection and the research and determine whether or not it makes sense to move forward, and allows for the school district's office to figure out if there's a payment plan that could work based upon, and we can go back and look and see how early people were getting their taxes in before August 15th date too. That's the other thing that worries me. If you push this to August 30th, are people really gonna start getting it in August 1st so that you can have this payment plan that makes sense? Go back to what it was, maybe with the commitment to get the data, with the commitment to have a special meeting if it makes sense to do so based upon what we find out, with a collaborative approach to both of these issues that we see, the school's ability to pay its bills, the town's ability to keep its residents whole who are expecting refunds.
That was the tenor of my motion, but it didn't pass.
Well, your motion was to remove the warrant altogether.
All right, so you want to keep it?
No, it was to reconsider.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I'm perfectly happy to follow that exact process, except we're gonna have the 30th date in our current motion, and if we go through a process of research and decide that this really is the wrong date and we need to have a special meeting to change it, instead of changing it from the 15th back to the 30th, if that was what we determined, we would have to have that meeting to change it from the 30th back to whatever we decided. So it's not any different from what you're saying, it's just that this is what we've decided to put on the warrant for now. But if we can have that, I totally support having that, doing that research, finding out what the real harm is on both sides as best we can. And I'd be perfectly willing to support a special meeting to reconsider this before next August, if we really find that this is somehow wildly mistaken. But we have had a process where we did determine that we needed to change this date, and so that's why we have decided to do this. And we actually decided it a long time ago, and we just put it off.
It's true, we have
discussing it until now, when we don't really have the information in front of us with which we can hand to you, because we decided it before. And that was our mistake, to not take the time to meet with you and go through a process while we had the time, and it really is due to our lack of staffing and our lack of foresight, and I'm sorry about that. And we still have time to, as you say, to have a special meeting exactly as the process you just described, but I think we're gonna do it with this date on the current warrant.
We have to.
Roger. Thank you, Roger.
Sorry.
All right, I guess that concludes, and it's going to go on as stated, but we'll see what the voters do with it. In the meantime, I would ask that Brennan you and Joyce work with the school department about a payment plan, and that we simultaneously start to initiate some sort of a procedure so that we begin to gather this data sooner rather than later.
I'm a little confused as to the data we're gathering.
We're going to find
I
out
can send you.
how many people were harmed by this escrow process. And
It's essentially anyone who receives income sensitivity in Norwich.
And has a mortgage.
Not anyone, some.
Some who receive income sensitivity, people who get a revised tax bill.
We do
And there's
get
lots of reasons
downloads.
why you would get a revised tax bill, by the way, but
We do get revised tax bills, downloads and revised, we do the downloads as much as possible before the initial tax bill goes out.
But-
There are lingering ones that come in after that.
yes,
It will happen, and it happens in every town in Vermont.
some with later tax dates, but yes.
It's not unique.
okay, so we will be in touch very soon to set up something. Okay? Sorry.
Thanks, guys.
All right. The next is the Article 40, which takes the last sentence, basically, of Article 39, and says, shall the voters authorize all delinquent taxes to be subject to a 4% collection fee after February 9, 2024, rather than the 8% collection fee allowed by 32 VSA 1674, paragraph, parent 2. Today I sent out a VLCT, I'm getting tired of
Model language.
model language with a couple of different ways to think about this. And Roger, you have some thoughts?
Well, I was just gonna say I really appreciated that, and I think we should just use the model language,
Okay,
which said,
go ahead.
which says, shall the town limit the amount of the penalty charged by the collector delinquent taxes for payments made after the due date for payments to 4% of the tax collected pursuant to.
The other thing that was a proposal in there is that you can have grace periods, you can have graduated penalties. I guess my question to the board is, do you want to just jump to 4% and leave it there, or do you want to have a graduated sort of penalty that, as it says, the sum of the two numbers can't exceed 8? No matter what you do, you can't have more than 8% of a penalty. But so we could make it a graduated thing, so that if somebody just misses it and inadvertently is a couple of days late, they're not getting an 8% penalty, they might get something less, but it can't go for forever at 4%. I don't even know if it can go forever. Yes, Roger?
I think one of the functions of tax collection, and I'm sure Cheryl can testify to this, is there's a real process for verifying what comes in late and what doesn't. And it's like, actually,
What does
in
that
here,
mean?
so when they come, so they look at the stamp, there's a process where everyone looks at the stamp, and if it comes in after that, then they're late, and they withhold the envelope, and they hold that envelope and use it as evidence for the person who comes in, right? So I would say in learning about sort of our internal processes around how things are determined to be late, I chose not to propose to the board when I was charged with drafting this, the graduation, because it would still create that burden and that potential conflict of sorting through who was late and who was how late. This avoids that administrative tension and gets to the heart of the question, does a late fee actually create incentive to pay on time? And I had said, studies show that, studies are inconclusive on that, but we do know that they create bad relationships when they get a fee where they're late. So because of what we sort of have learned about sort of how things are determined to be late and the rigor and the intensity in which they are determined, that's why I just said 4%. And it was in between the only other two communities that I could find that didn't charge the 8%, right? There was the 5 and the 2.
Who were the other two communities?
It was Shelburne and Hartford, and so it was thought that it was, I speculated that it wasn't because the communities voted, but because they provided in their charters. And then I'm done. I obviously talked enough.
Does any other board member have any other thoughts about the VLTC language, or changing the amount, or graduating it, or any of the above?
Well, are you proposing a particular graduation schedule?
I'm not, I'm throwing it out, but it's a possibility that we could consider. I mean, it might be 4% for a while and then 8%.
I think without any examples or something tried and true or expert testimony, I think we would just be, coming out of nowhere to come up with a schedule. So I guess well, I'm sort of intrigued by the idea. I would want some, I don't think we have time to invent a penalty, a fee schedule at this juncture, because it's also, it has to be administrated, right? It's like you've charged 2% and now you're gonna charge another 2%, or is it now you're gonna charge 4%? I mean, it's not I think it's not a totally simple thing that we could just do on an ad hoc.
You could propose a motion, Marcia, where you direct town staff to keep track for reporting to the board as to how many people pay late and when they paid late. So the graduation proposal could come up
And then we would have data.
year.
Yeah.
So if that's something we're interested in, we could keep this and then have a separate motion as part of this discussion that directs staff to do that.
Yeah, I think just like the last discussion, more data is a good thing. We
Yeah,
can't
I don't think we're in a
operate-
position to invent a graduated schedule.
Well, I don't know that anybody tests it too much first, I don't know,
Right.
Mhm.
But,
Right, that's right.
so, I mean, we don't even know right now, I don't know how many people are late anyway.
Exactly.
So I don't know,
I think not that, I mean, that's what I said last time, like, I think we're not so in delinquent, right, where, this is sort of acknowledging that 8% might be punitive for people who pay hours or days late, right? Not, because we're not a community that has tons of months or years.
Yeah, we're
Fortunately.
not really solving a big problem here. We're just making the suggestion that 8% is unnecessarily high for unnecessarily high.
so, does someone want to make a motion, one way or another?
Well, I think we've already
We've already
put this
done
on
that.
here, so I don't think
Alright.
we need to change anything.
So everybody's happy and they don't want to change it to the VLTC language or any of the.
Well,
no, there was- right, there was a
I
model.
would like to do that if that's something that you would like to take a motion for.
Just to a piece of it, because the
I-
model language includes the graduated option too.
Well, I have one for the 4%. So I move to amend, what number is it?
Article 40.
I move to amend Article 40 to read, shall the town of Norwich limit the amount of the penalty charged I guess we could say by the collector of delinquent taxes for payments made after the due date, for payments to 4% of the tax collected pursuant to, and then you have the statute there.
It's right here.
32 VSA
This is what you said.
1642.
He's
I have
reading
3A.
this one and he just added of Norwich and then he made payments.
The statute I have is 1674 3A in the
Yeah.
model language.
It's the first one right there, okay.
Okay. So my motion is to keep the 4%, but I'm proposing a change in the language to the model language.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Aaron seconded it? Oh, discussion, do you have a
Is
question?
there discussion? I was just gonna ask, Roger, was this you, I didn't catch whether you had some position on this? So
this is to approve the warrant. We discussed the merits of it last week. I don't know, Madam Chair, in the interest of time, if you,
I
I'm
haven't
happy
seen
to,
any minutes. I
I'm
haven't
happy
seen
to,
Oh.
I'm happy to restate,
It's basically
but,
that, we'd be changing the delinquency from 8% collection fee to 4% collection fee.
And I'm asking you, what the genesis of this is coming from? Where's it coming from?
so,
Roger?
really briefly, we, as you can imagine, people, have found 8% punitive. And so I had done some research, the majority of communities, because you can vote to change it to anything that you would want. It doesn't have to be 8%. It's 8% by default unless a community votes to change it, which is what we're proposing now, as you know. And so most communities retain the 8%. There's a few examples, two that I can recall immediately that don't have it at 8%. Shelburne at 5%, and Hartford at 2%, I believe. I don't necessarily think I speculate that these communities, as I said, were not, it wasn't because they voted to change it, but rather because they have charters and they made that through the charter process. So we're saying 4 on the basis, what I proposed was on the basis that 8 was punitive, and because these fees don't necessarily lead to incentives for people to pay on time. And because ultimately we have people who are days and weeks late, and we don't have, fortunately, people who are months and years late. So that was the basis in which this board, I think, generally considered the 4%.
I would just like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
So, I would say that there's a couple other options too, and that is a 4% initially with an increase up to the 8% maximum at a later time, a week later.
We just talked about that while you stepped out.
Okay.
Marcia advocated she brought forth all of the options from VLCT.
I think the rationale for that is that you're helping those people that left it on the visor in the car and forgot to drop it at Tracy Hall, or they mailed it a day late, and you're giving them that break for that group that has that happen. And then there's those that aren't gonna pay on the due date, and they're not gonna pay a month later, they're not gonna pay along the way because that's the situation they're in. So that, you end up as a town capturing the maximum you can to also, I'm guessing the budget that got approved
Yes, I did.
probably reflected a revenue amount fairly consistent with what the delinquent tax fees were for prior years. So by changing this, you're going to reduce income to the town. And there's a cost to collecting taxes. I mean, there is a cost to collecting delinquent taxes. You have to send out notices every month to keep them abreast of what they owe and what they should be making payment plans. All that work is what the 8% helps, or 4 to the 8% helps to offset. So.
And some poor towns have to do foreclosures.
Well, that is, and there is a delinquent tax list, by the way, that goes back several years.
Okay, well, we'll see how much harm this causes. Okay, so we have a second, shall we call the question? Rob? Yes, do you have a comment?
Repeat the
Motion?
Motion.
Yes. It's right here. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
To change the model language.
Shall the town of Norwich limit the amount of penalty charged by the collector of delinquent taxes for payments made after the due date for payments to 4% of the tax collected pursuant to 32 VSA 1674 3A?
Gotcha. So we're voting?
Yes, Rob?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, no. All right, we are now moving on to,
Could I ask,
Yeah.
because we'll have to change that, if somebody could send me the exact language that was in that
Yes.
motion? Or to Miranda and I, probably best.
yep,
Thank you.
Yes, I'll do that right now.
we will do that.
Yep.
Okay, next is the fire department grant money. I think we're all set on that one. We voted it last time, correct?
There's 2 different options
Yeah,
presented
for some reason,
to
there's
us.
2 almost identical options.
Yeah, so that was, we can choose which one we like, I guess.
There was a slight discrepancy, it's very
It's
minuscule.
transferring versus the transfer of.
Yeah, there was that, and I think
And
one
the general
says state
fund.
of, and I can't remember exactly.
That was awarded? Yeah, they're almost
Oh.
identical.
I read that to you.
I think one came from Matt, who sent that in following the meeting, and one Marcia kind of put together as we were talking, and like I said, they were very similar. We can pick one and we'll publish that. If anyone has a preference.
Which article is it now? I've lost it.
It's
Oh, there it is, 14.
14, yeah.
I think probably the second one looks a little better,
Oh, it's moved up to 14 now.
but they're almost
So
the
the
same.
first one is, shall the voters of the town of Norwich approve transferring up to $46,800 from the general fund that was awarded to the fire department from a Vermont Department of Health COVID staffing grant into the fire equipment designated fund? I think I took that one by shorthand. Does that sound right?
And that was,
That was, I think, the one that I sent
I
in.
think that was Matt's, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the second one was yours, and, yeah, this is the transfer, as opposed to transferring up to.
Shall the voters of the town of Norwich approve the transfer of up to $46,000 from the general fund that was awarded to the Norwich Fire Department from the state of Vermont? Oh, so it's Norwich is added and
Yeah, transfer
state
instead of
Vermont.
transferring.
State, it says.
Oh, yeah, state of, yeah.
I'm fine with whatever you choose. I only sent the one that I transcribed because I thought I was asked to do so.
We should call it the Matt Sweat article, the Matt Sweat version.
The sweat fund.
The Sweat bill, yeah.
I do not stand to profit from anything
Yes, yes.
other than safety.
So Matt's the one who proposed this, so I'd say we go with the Matt Sweat, Article 14.
Okay.
just keep it, just keep it.
If you wrote, if you took out the up to, I'm good with taking that out because I only put that in because someone said,
I had up to as well.
oh, okay.
It's kind of funny to have up to it
I
and
don't
then
know
have a
why,
very
'cause-
specific amount.
Yeah, I agree, and that
But
wasn't
why
in
it's
my
up to?
original proposal, because it is a specific amount.
I think I might have read it off because I was reading from last year where it said up to.
All right,
Doesn't
ladies
matter.
and
Strike
gentlemen,
that.
shall we scrub out up to?
Yes.
Do we want to vote on that, or are we all set?
I think we're all
We're
set.
okay.
Okay,
This is not
So,
substantive.
top, upper version is what's gonna be published?
Yes.
Sure.
And take out up to,
that's correct.
okay?
Then we are down to the town clerk appointment, and I wrote that one very simply. That's which
I
one?
think last time we talked, at least, we asked the question of, is there model language for this one?
Yes, there is.
And it seems like there's no reason for us not to just use model language.
Model language.
It's just vetted, less likely to
Exactly.
be sued.
Why not use vetted language?
Hold on, let me see.
You have a nice simple motion on that.
I'm looking, appointment, here, let me click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. Okay, I think actually the model language is as Marcia wrote it. It says, shall the voters authorize the select board to appoint a town clerk as provided in 17 VSA 2651E. Is that how you wrote it?
Yeah, almost as allowed by.
Yeah, I followed the statute.
You can say as provided in, it's just the model language rather than as allowed by.
No, seems like that's not a substantive difference.
What number is
What
it
is
now?
substance?
I don't know.
I don't know what's on that list.
What number is it, you guys? Do you see it?
Where?
On the warrant,
On the
15,
warrant.
it's number 15,
15.
after 14, before 16.
So I think it's just, we don't have to vote, we could just agree to change it to as provided in as opposed to as allowed by,
Sure.
right?
As
Good.
provided.
In 17 VSA, did you say 2651E?
2651E, Prince A, Prince
Small
1.
e,
Small e, parentheses,
parentheses,
A.
small a, parentheses 1.
This just says 2651E,
Right, 'cause that includes A1.
yes. Okay,
So that's unchanged?
We're
Just the
gonna-
as provided.
The
Is it as
words
provided?
allowed by are becoming provided in.
Provided.
I believe so.
And that may conclude the warrant.
Will there never not be a controversial and difficult warrant in the town?
So-
Oh, no.
What we're going to need to do now is make a motion to approve the warrant pending the language recommended by council for Article 11. Is it 11?
Yeah, we wanted to change, we took action to change Article 11 to the model language.
12? It's the lister.
Oh, it's the lister, it's 12, you're right.
Okay. So someone want to make a motion?
I already made a motion.
No, a motion for the whole warrant? Do we,
For the whole warrant?
we've done each one. Do we need to do a whole warrant?
I don't know, I thought we probably did.
I move to approve the warrant as discussed, amended, and ratified in the last several meetings.
With
the, I don't know,
addition of the language for Article
okay.
12.
If so necessary, and it was,
yeah, with it, okay. With the addition of,
As recommended by council.
recommended by council.
You couldn't repeat that, could you? I'll have to look at the tape on that, I think.
Motion to approve the warrant as
Ratified?
as discussed and amended.
Discussed, amended, and ratified.
Well,
I
we're
kind of like
ratifying it
that.
now.
That's-
Well, we've ratified each
Amended.
thing as we go.
And ratified,
Pending
pending.
recommended language
Yeah, amended language.
for Article 12. The recommended language from council for Article 12.
Okay.
So that was motioned
Aaron.
by Aaron. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mary. Can we have a vote? All in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Good job. Next, under discussion items, it came to my consciousness that we do not have a tree warden and that we are obligated to have one under 24 VSA 871B. And once we have one, we have to certify that person to the Commission of Forest, Parks, and Recreation on a specific form. So, I would like to ask the board for authorization to put out a call for anyone who's interested in serving as tree warden. And then when we have some, hopefully some interest, we will come back to that issue here at the board and appoint someone.
Sounds good to me.
Would someone like to make a motion to,
Have a motion for that?
I don't
Just
know.
agree.
I move to direct the interim town manager to put out a call for a tree warden, set applications for the position of tree warden.
And do we have a second? Seconded by Roger, all in favor? Excellent. All right. And now,
I will just add that we had a application dropped off this afternoon.
Without even having.
I thought we must already have
You
done
just
that.
jumped in and interrupted us.
all great minds, okay.
Do we want to have, was there a date of ending that? Like,
Can we say February
we should probably have a
2nd?
date where
How
we're
about this
gonna
afternoon?
find out who we have and then go from there.
Or a date to consider
weeks?
it.
A date to consider, maybe
What do we do, Thursday before, maybe our second meeting in February?
for first meeting? Do you
Well, we
have
probably
some-
already got a lot on our first meeting, let's push it off a little.
All right.
It's not that urgent.
Now, before we move into executive session, does anyone have a comment? Cheryl?
Yes, before the meeting started, I gave Marcia a copy of the warrant for the last payables that has not been signed by any select board members, to my knowledge. I'm speaking with Ashley today at the office. She indicated that she doesn't have any warrants in her folder for payables that have signatures on them. If there is a document that gets sent around that has signatures on it by the select board approving the payable warrant that you approve at a meeting, she needs to get those copies in her office there.
So those are on the DocuSign,
So we
right?
usually got
Usually
those
do
sent to us via DocuSign.
Okay, so there's some confusion. So I get that and I sign it. I think
And I
Marcia
get it.
gets that.
That's payroll.
The payroll, yeah.
And the DocuSign, I think.
Well,
I thought it
DocuSign
was
is the
one as well.
application, not the,
So there's two different warrants, where payroll goes through Marcia and you and me, we get all that done, that's over there, and those are all signed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the payable one since July that Ashley has no payable warrants in her folder with select board signatures on them.
And I seem to remember asking why we weren't signing them
I think
again.
I have heard you say that.
And then I was told, I think if I'm remembering correctly, that the board had voted that the chair could do it.
That what?
That the chair
oh, I
could
think
do
it's
it.
for
That was
payroll.
for
Just
payroll.
payroll?
Yeah,
Only
So,
for payroll, and if there's an odd payable warrant that gets
Yeah,
done.
an off
But then
cycle.
those warrants are supposed to go into the next packet for everybody to see what's been paid. So I brought the folder on Ashley's behalf, and wanted to then let you all know that there's, and Aaron, you probably don't wanna go back and do that, but there's some that might apply to you, but that,
Yes.
if there is an AP warrant signed, it's not in her office, and the
So-
auditors won't be happy with that.
so can we get them all pulled out and we'll all go in and sign every one of them?
Start signing them.
I'll leave that up to the interim town manager to orchestrate. I offered to take them all, but Ashley and I just decided then that one was enough, so the rest of them need to get circulated. And a meeting like this, in person is obviously a good time to do.
Right.
Anyway,
Thank you for bringing that up. And
thanks
thanks to everyone for coming.
It's down at the end, okay.
Miranda's recollection was that there was some kind of decision that those could be signed by maybe I'm thinking of only the payroll. Maybe
You're thinking of
Right,
payroll.
thinking just
So
payroll.
there's,
My understanding, but of course I haven't been here since
We'll just do them.
Thank you. Does Cheryl need this?
That-
Cheryl, do you need this back?
Yeah, I'll take it,
Well done.
or Brett, you want me to bring it over to the office?
if you're going back, yeah, I'm
Okay.
actually not in tomorrow.
Okay,
and
I'll
so-
hand it over.
Swear.
Perfect, thank you all.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Have we moved to go into?
I don't believe we have yet.
Because we didn't elect an moderator.
Nobody's applying.